you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Tom McKenzie.
Former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn speaking in Beirut after his dramatic escape from Tokyo. Let's have some reaction to that now. Sophia University law professor Stephen Givens joins us from Tokyo. What did you make of Ghosn's press conference, his performance? Was he convincing?
In many ways, I think it was a masterful performance. And he very convincingly made the case, first of all, that the initial charges brought against him were weak, flimsy. He also made a convincing case that this was part of a palace coup that was trying to scuttle his plans to merge Nissan and Renault. And he also, I think, was very convincing about the Japanese criminal justice system, that he and other criminal suspects here undergo procedures that are cruel and not in keeping with international standards.
We're clearly a long way from any resolution between the two sides on this. How potentially damaging is this to Japan Inc.?
I think it's very damaging. He said that there's been $10 billion wiped off the market cap of Nissan, which is true. Overall, I think that the damage both to Nissan, to Renault and Japan has been quite serious.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Very good morning. This is your Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. I'm Caroline Hepker. In terms of the markets this morning, the US Stock 600 gained 0.6%. The Xetra DAX also higher by 1.4% at the moment after the Japanese Nikkei closed higher by 2.3%. The background to this, well, markets showing relief that the US and Iran are stepping back from a deeper military conflict, regardless really of how temporary it may or may not turn out to be. In terms of the individual companies, though, that are making news, well, here in the UK, it's all been about the retailers, Marks and Spencer's in particular. That is the biggest decliner at the moment on the US Stock 600, down by 9.9%. The clothing sales remained a big drag for the high street firm over the Christmas period. Meanwhile, in terms of other markets, the gold spot price this morning is down by 0.7%, 1,546. Oil trades at $65.88 for Brent, WTI at $60. So a gain there of 0.7%, again on the relief really around the Middle Eastern tensions perhaps subsiding somewhat. And just in the bond markets, yield on 10-year treasuries falling less than a basis point to 1.87%, and Germany's 10-year yield climbing 1.5 basis points to -19. So that is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Cairns with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Contradictory reports emerging about what caused a Ukrainian Boeing 737 to crash in Iran. Tehran initially blaming a technical issue, then an engine fire. The Ukrainian embassy ruling out terrorism, but then amending its statement to offer no comment on the case. All 176 people on board the plane were killed in that crash. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy will face a corruption trial in October. He's charged with attempting to persuade a high-ranking magistrate to leak confidential information about another investigation targeting him. French investigators began tapping Sarkozy's phone back in 2013 as part of a probe into allegations of illegal funding by the regime of Libya's former leader Muammar Gaddafi. And 1 billion animals may have been killed in Australia's bushfires since September, according to a scientist. This doubling earlier estimates as the scale of the crisis continues to emerge. New figures from the University of Sydney's Chris Dickman show 800 million animals may have been killed through burning or loss of habitat. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the city of London. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Chris Bryant, who's writing about Carlos Ghosn's press conference yesterday and the need for justice to be served. So, Chris, I watched this. I think we all kind of watched this, and I was waiting with bated breath. I was really waiting for like a week, hoping that Ghosn was going to drop this bomb that was going to somehow prove his innocence and, unmask this conspiracy group, but it didn't seem to yield much of anything.
That's right, Matt. I mean, my personal view, and I think it's, somewhat widely shared, was that it was all a bit farcical yesterday. Perhaps it was too much to hope, really, that Ghosn was going to come along and put out this evidence which proved his innocence. And again, I think, really the press conference is not really the right forum to do that. I mean, it was an extraordinary scrum, there are tons of journalists there, almost, clamoring to ask a question. Mr. Ghosn, obviously a sort of consummate media professional, but really, at times it was sort of hard to understand what he really was saying, and oftentimes he sort of reverted to talking about his career at Nissan, the success he's had there, almost as if, what a successful guy I was, how could I possibly be guilty of anything? And frankly, at the end of the day, and I am not a fan of the Japanese justice system from which he fled, but he's still got questions to answer, and I just don't think a press conference is really the sort of the forum to do that in, and I think that showed yesterday. He's still got work to do to clear his name.
But yeah, Chris, some of the scenes did seem to be pretty chaotic, didn't they, with questions flying and answers flying in many different languages. That in itself, I suppose, on some other level impressive. But let me ask you about
let's just go through those.
System goes.
He was speaking Portuguese.
Yes,
he was
French,
speaking French,
English, and Arabic.
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to.
I know.
That's impressive.
That is impressive, but has no bearing on the facts, I suppose. But let me ask you then, Chris, your thoughts on where the justice process goes from here, because this does seem to be somebody who had the financial means to choose not to experience the Japanese justice system in a way that other people wouldn't have that choice.
Right. I mean, I think there's a sort of tendency in part of the media to make him out as some kind of folk hero. But at the end of the day, Mr. Ghosn is a man of means who managed to spirit himself out of the country. And now, if you listen to him yesterday, it's almost like he wants to decide how he himself will be tried for these charges. And I just don't think that's quite right. I don't think people get to decide how, where a case is heard or what evidence is considered and so forth. And I also can't imagine that the Japanese are in much of a mood to cooperate with the Lebanese authorities here. At the end of the day, Ghosn is a wanted man in Japan. It's hard to imagine they're just going to sort of turn over the evidence and say, hey, you get on with it now. So I think that would be very difficult. And Ghosn sort of dodged a sort of question about whether he might go to France, which I still think would be a sort of better forum to hear this, because obviously the Lebanese is very sympathetic to Mr. Ghosn. It was awkward at times.
He did say if they come and get him, he's willing to face justice in France. He said, look, you've got to at least admire his bravery. The man was in a situation where prosecutors could grill him all day with no lawyer. They seemed to be able to flout the law whenever they wanted to, and they have a 99%. I mean, you're guilty. If you're tried in Japan, you are guilty. So he took this big risk, walked out of his house in a hat and a mask, got onto a long-distance train, put himself in a suitcase. You got to admire that bravery, Chris.
No, absolutely. At the end of the day, very high-risk strategy. If he'd have been caught, he'd have been straight back in jail. At the same time, by fleeing Japanese justice, he's made it that much harder now for white-collar criminals in Japan who in future, if they're arrested, they will not be granted bail. So in a sense, also a bit of a selfish act. I can understand why he did it, but I think now he also needs to go through a regular judicial process, not some kind of holding court in front of the world's press, and here, let me tell you why Japan is wrong.
All right. Hopefully we're using the term Japanese justice very lightly. Chris Bryant, thanks so much for joining us, a Bloomberg opinion columnist. Check out his work and the work of his colleagues by typing OPIN GO on the terminal. Up next, we're going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to give you all you need, the weather and the sports and everything, but we're going to talk a little bit more about the German economy. This is Bloomberg.
with the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr. Nike has signed a multi-year deal to be the official jersey provider for Liverpool Soccer Club. It hands the current powerhouse of European football to the world's largest sportswear maker by revenue. The agreement follows a prickly court battle between Liverpool and its current outfitter New Balance Athletics over contract terms that expire this year. Sunderland said that it has started the process to sell the UK soccer team just days after a coordinated fan backlash against its current owner. In a statement, the board of Sunderland says it feels it has no option but to sell the club after a recent fan campaign asking for insurance entrepreneur Stuart Donald to depart. Donald said when he bought the team 18 months ago that he would not outstay his welcome. The statement went on to say the team is one of the few in English soccer to be debt-free and break even on an operational basis. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr. In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Family properties and investments have been passed to the next generation, but while the business has evolved, has your accountant stayed behind? Burden Accountants and Advisors examines the latest business trends, market conditions, and industry issues to maximize your tax advantages and meet your financial goals. Let Burden use their insight to create innovative tax solutions for your family and your business. Visit burdenllp.com to get started. BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the German capital of Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards. It is 9:30 here in London, 10:30 if you're in Berlin or in Paris. With Matt Miller, you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. And European equity markets, a very different picture from yesterday then, Matt. This time yesterday, we were all waiting to hear what President Trump had to say about the Iranian attacks on their bases in Iraq, on US bases in Iraq. And then we heard, and it sounded very much like de-escalation, and the market's certainly taking it that way.
The markets definitely want to take it that way. I mean, look, yesterday we were down 1% across the indexes here in Europe at this time, and by the end of the session, the markets had decided, this is not going to go much further. The Iranians have done all they're going to, and they bid up the indexes here. The U.S. indexes rose, closed higher yesterday, and now we have European indexes off to the races again. The DAX, for example, right now is up 1.25%, 166 points to 13,487. So investors are bullish equities right now, and U.S. futures are rising as well as we get closer and closer to the U.S. equity session. We have Dow and S&P mini contracts up 0.3%, NASDAQ futures up about 0.5% right now. So it looks like the rally will continue when the New York Stock Exchange rings the opening bell. In terms of risk assets, there's not much change in the 10-year yield, 1.8791% right now. But investors are buying the dollar against the yen. You can get more than 109 yen again for a dollar, 109.37 to be exact. And gold, the price for a troy ounce of the glittery stuff has gone down. $1,546.85 is what it costs you to buy a troy ounce of gold. Oil had fallen earlier, now bounced back a little bit, but still to, at least relative to the last few days, a fairly low level, $65.78 a barrel for Brent crude. NYMEX WTI going for $59.95. Anna?
Now to Germany, where we find Matt, but let's talk about the broader economic story there. Is there light at the end of the tunnel for Europe's biggest economy? Industrial production rebounded in November after 2 months of declines. Easy to cautious sign that Germany could be near the bottom of its manufacturing slump. Let's bring in to the conversation Bloomberg's European economy reporter, Carolyn Look, who's live from Frankfurt. Carolyn, good to speak to you. So is this light at the end of the tunnel for the German manufacturing story? I mean, I don't know if I just have a very short-term memory for this stuff, but yesterday's data seemed to be gloomy. So what's the overall picture?
Good morning, Anna. Yeah, so the answer really is yes and no. I mean, while you're right that the increase in industrial production in November does come as a bit of a relief, what it really only seems to do is reverse the decline in the previous month, and what economists are saying is that it still means that output is likely to have fallen overall in the fourth quarter. So, and like you mentioned, if you look at factory orders, which came out yesterday, we did see quite a sizable slump there in November of 1.3%. So that shows that there's signs that the situation could remain challenging for a while, which is also what the economy ministry said.
Well, and in some ways it plays into the hands of the ECB, right? Mario Draghi has been calling for stimulus out of Berlin had been for his entire career, and now we're getting those same calls from the new president, Christine Lagarde. What does this mean for the wider euro area?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Matt. I mean, Germany is Europe's largest economy, and if growth remains depressed throughout 2020, as the country's central bank is predicting, then that will undoubtedly weigh on prospects for the region. So, as you mentioned, we did hear from European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde yesterday, who actually spoke in her first interview of the year with a French magazine, and one of her key messages echoed what Draghi used to say, which was that fiscal actors need to make more of a concerted effort to speed up growth, especially as there are still a number of risks remaining on the horizon, with trade tensions remaining an ongoing dilemma for the export-focused economy.
What's genuinely more likely to happen then, Caroline? Are we more likely to get a step up in fiscal spending from Germany? Because they are spending fiscally already, loosening the taps a little bit, I understand. But are we going to get a step up in that, or is there going to need to be some ECB action to stimulate?
I mean, so far we're not seeing high expectations among analysts for the ECB to act further this year. But the bulk of their actions took place towards the end of last year. And in terms on the fiscal front, what we've been hearing out of Berlin is proposals that are mostly focused around a climate package, which has received criticism from all sides of the spectrum, with industry representatives saying that could be worrying for competitiveness, and environmentalists are saying it's not ambitious enough, and a lot of economists are saying that it might not really have the fiscal impact to offset a broader downturn. So it really remains to be seen if the economy worsens more, what the German government will do to counteract this.
How disappointing would that be if you spend 50 or 60 billion dollars on a climate package that A, doesn't really help the climate, and B, doesn't even stimulate the economy? What a waste that would be. Well, we'll watch, Carolyn, and we'll rely on your reporting to help us understand this developing story. Carolyn Look joining us there from Bloomberg's European economy team.
Now let's get the latest, Matt, in global news flow. Here's Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans.
Anna, good morning. The US and Iran are backing away from direct conflict, but tensions in the Middle East still remain high. A Pentagon report indicates a missile attack against US bases in Iraq was aimed to avoid casualties. President Trump using a speech yesterday to promise more sanctions on Iran. Japan is pushing back against Carlos Ghosn, its justice minister, saying Ghosn's criticism of the nation's legal system is, quote, intolerable. She's also accused him of spreading lies. This after the former Nissan chief also hit out at President Emmanuel Macron. He blamed the French leader for setting in motion the chain of events that led to his eventual downfall. The UK and EU are mapping out rival red lines for a post-Brexit deal. It's the first clash of a negotiation that may be even harder than the divorce talks. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is stressing he won't extend the UK's transition period, but EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen says a full deal by the end of the year is impossible.
You cannot have the highest quality access to the world's largest single market. The more divergence there is, the more distant the partnership will be. And without an extension of the transition period beyond 2020, you cannot expect to agree on every single aspect of our new partnership.
And Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle may become stars of the new public speaking circuit. The two have announced they're stepping back from their roles as senior members of the British royal family. They say they'll work to become financially independent. One agent says Harry should be able to command as much as former President Obama, about $500,000 per appearance. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Anna.
Thanks very much, Leanne. Now with your morning sports news, here's William Essler.
Leicester boss Brendan Rodgers was frustrated his side couldn't press home their dominance against Aston Villa last night. They drew 1-1 in the first leg of their League Cup semi-final, despite having 70% possession and 7 times as many shots as their opposition. Rangers captain James Tavernier believes this season's Scottish Premiership title race will go down to the wire. Leaders Celtic have a 2-point advantage at the top of the table, but their old firm rivals have a game in hand. And England cricketer James Anderson has been ruled out of the rest of their Test series against South Africa. The bowler suffered a rib injury in his side's victory in Cape Town earlier this week. Anderson was limited to just 8 overs in the final day of the second Test due to discomfort. The third game in the series starts on Thursday next week in Port Elizabeth.
Let's get the U.S. Sports Report with Pete Fox. Pete?
From the night on the NBA hardwood, the Knicks had a tough go in Utah, as most visitors do, especially when you're on a back-to-back. Utah winning it comfortably 128-104. Wizards also with one to forget as they were worked by the Magic 123-89. Troy Brown Jr. 18-11 off the bench as no Wizard starters put up double figures. And in Boston at TD Garden, Kemba Walker ejected in the early going as the Spurs beat the Celtics 129-114. Gordon Hayward with 18 points in the loss. From the night on the ice, goals from Backstrom and Vrana, which gave the Caps a 2-1 lead early. They let it slip, falling to the Flyers 3-2. I'm Pete Fox. That's your Bloomberg NBC World Sports Update.
Pete, thanks very much for that. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we'll get a take on global growth and what Middle East tensions, US politics and Brexit, back to that one, all mean for the economy. Neil Duane, global strategist at Allianz Global Investors, will talk about the global economy. We'll talk about, obviously, investment strategy, whether it's too early to conclude that we are through the worst of the tensions in US-Iranian geopolitics. That seems to be the way the market is viewing yesterday's press conference from President Trump. But how will the Iranians behave from here? We will certainly focus in on that story and get your investment strategy. Where does that leave oil, leave gold, leave yen and other haven assets? This is Bloomberg.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me, I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
No company wants to be involved in an international dispute. But when disagreements arise, you need expertise at your side. Take a closer look at ICDR, the International Center for Dispute Resolution. Backed by the longevity and strength of the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of cross-border dispute resolution services, handling more cases than any other institution. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/Cs.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go. Three from the angle. Got it.
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
On the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
And a move, and a shot, they stop!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So European shares are up this morning by 0.4% right now. The Xetra DAX gains a more significant 1.2% at the moment. The sectors doing the best in terms of the Eurostoxx 600 technology and telecoms companies. Why? Well, the market's showing relief after the US and Iran stepped back a little bit from a deeper military conflict, regardless perhaps of how temporary that may turn out to be one way or the other. Also, the Japanese Nikkei overnight in Asia closing higher 2.3%. In terms of the kind of return to risk assets, looking at the gold spot price right now, we trade at 1,547.33, so down 0.6% there. The oil markets gain 0.5% for WTI and Brent crude futures contracts, $59.92 for WTI, $65.76 for Brent crude. And in the bond market, in terms of yields at the moment, US benchmark 10-year Treasury yields just slipping a basis point to 1.86%, and German yields at negative 20 basis points at the moment. The big lines, German industrial production rebounding in November after 2 months of declines, and then even earlier this morning we had data out of China, consumer inflation steadying in December. So those have been the big news lines for the markets. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Gerrans with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Contradictory reports emerging about what caused a Ukrainian Boeing 737 to crash in Iran. Tehran initially blaming a technical issue, then an engine fire. The Ukrainian embassy ruling out terrorism, but then amending its statement to offer no comment on the cause. All 176 people on board the plane were killed in the crash. An emergency warning has been issued for South Australia's Kangaroo Island amid extreme fire conditions. Made made up of mostly shacks. It's thought fewer than 100 people live there, but the island is home to a lot of local and endangered wildlife. More than a third of the island has burned. And finally, Thailand is embracing medical cannabis, with the industry poised to expand to more than $600 million by 2024. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister wants to add cannabis plantations and processing facilities to the northeastern farming province. At the same time, the government has launched a campaign called Dr. Ganja, a green cuddly teddy whose job is to educate Thailand about the benefits of medical marijuana. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Jan Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Matt.
That was fascinating, Leanne. I thought your stories, some critically important stories, some big concerns that we all need to work on as a planet together, and some just really curious stuff there. Thank you so much for bringing us.
Would you like to define curious?
That roundup. I love the Dr. Ganja teddy bear in Thailand. I mean, very interesting is what I'll say about that. Thank you very much.
Of news flow.
Yes, Leanne Gerrans there with your global news headlines. Now, let's get over to Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager is prepping for Bloomberg Daybreak out of the U.S. next. Nathan, what do you got?
Well, we are following, as always, the latest developments between the U.S. and Iran. As it stands now, cooler heads do seem to be prevailing, and we're seeing that spark a relief rally in markets. Oil well off highs at the height of the tensions. Gold, haven currencies falling. Jeremy Stretch, head of G10 FX strategy at CIBC, is going to join us. We'll see what he thinks the next move may be in currency markets. Plus, we have further confirmation a Phase 1 trade deal between the U.S. and China will be signed here in Washington next week. We'll check in with Commerce Bank Global Equities economist Peter Dixon as we look ahead to the final payrolls report of 2019 coming out tomorrow. All that and more coming up with me and Karen Moscow on Bloomberg Daybreak. Please stay with us for it.
This gives me the opportunity to plug a function on the Bloomberg that I really think is cool. WHIS Go. WIS Go allows everybody with a Bloomberg terminal to put in her or his guess for what the non-farm payrolls number is going to be, and then you can compete against your peers, other Bloomberg subscribers, and see who's the closest.
Yeah. Never a dull moment when
all right. WHIS Go
comes out.
Nathan Hager. Well, it's the granddaddy of all economic statistics. It's a big important number. Nathan Hager coming up next with Karen Moscow. If you're tuned in on Sirius XM, if you're listening on London DAB digital radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
The WIS number, as it's known, 170,000, which is interesting after ADP created 200,000, more than 200,000 jobs yesterday in the private sector. Just saying, Matt. Let's talk about what's going on in European markets, though, right now. Trading higher as the US and Iran appear to be stepping back from a deeper military conflict. Is it too early to say? How should we play this market at the moment? Neil Duane, global strategist at Allianz Global Investors, is with us. Very good to speak to you this morning, Neil.
Good morning, Anna.
What is the view then at Allianz about whether you buy dips in this market? Because we've seen a few dips, a few opportunities to get in with geopolitical tension.
Well, we sort of entered the 2020 relatively cautious. And I think the Trump-Iran spat has sort of, I think, surprised us all, because I suppose it could have happened any time in the last 4 years, and it just so happened to happen in this year. But I suppose we think we're really waiting to see what happens with corporate earnings. We're starting to see, as we know in the UK, some Christmas trading and other updates, and picking up on your news flow. Not surprisingly, Q4 in the UK was weak because of Brexit and then the uncertainty around the election. So we're seeing a lot of response from the retailers. We're starting to see some interesting responses in the US too, with Walgreens overnight. So I think we're just waiting to see whether it's worth adding risk to your portfolio at this moment in time from wherever you entered this year. And I think it's all about the results rather than the macro or central banks at this time.
So the central banks, you don't think are going to play a role in 2020? I mean, not that they won't do anything, but you don't think that investors are going to push up asset prices merely on the back of central bank stimulus?
Well, I think, to be honest, Matt, I think that's been happening since the summer with the turn in the ECB to sort of doing more QE, and I think obviously the repo action from the Fed, I think, has been supportive of the unleveraging that we would have normally seen at the end of the year from many investment positions and banking positions. So I think a lot of that's in. We know the Fed has said that they will only raise rates if they see inflation. So I don't think any of us in the first 6 months see inflation really coming through. And so I think it is, dare I say it, thank goodness, back to fundamentals. Of course, where I would differentiate is I think the fundamentals in Europe are getting better. The Brexit uncertainty, we believe, will get sorted this year, and that will allow Europe to get its act together more constructively. Whereas I think in the second half of this year, the markets will worry much more about the politics in the US, which could decline and become very toxic as we head into November.
Sticking with the UK for just a moment, Neil, I'm just watching the pound. The pound has dropped like a stone just in the last few minutes. Well, if a stone drops 0.5%, that is what the pound has done. And interesting because Mark Carney is speaking, Bank of England governor still, commenting in the text of a speech that he's set to give in London. And he said that the bar to changing UK monetary framework is high. But he's also said that QE, forward guidance, rate cuts are all part of the tools available. The economic growth in the UK has slowed below potential. The rebound from Brexit uncertainty is not assured. I thought it was something to do with his comments on the UK monetary policy, but I suppose that comment around the bar to changing UK monetary framework is high. That's not suggesting that anything about monetary policy from here, is it necessarily in the short term? That's just talking about the overall design of the monetary framework, which is sort of something for his successor. I'm a little confused, frankly, as to why the pound has dropped so much, but your thoughts on the pound at this point?
Well, we think strategically the pound is actually against the dollar going back to 150, where it started 3.5 years ago with the Brexit decision. So we like sterling as an asset class, and I think, to be honest, I think there's been an element of profit taking after the strong rally we've seen in the pound, and I think many international investors and maybe even some domestic investors are waiting to see the priorities of the new Boris Johnson government, how he's going to not only get Brexit done, but also refire and re-stimulate the UK economy. So I think as we get a clearer narrative, and that may be therefore a Q1 narrative rather than a January the 10th narrative, we think that investors who have been hedged or cautious on the UK will begin to return. So that's what I would read into it. I mean, a 0.5 point on an FX, I'm not too sure if in the end is just noise.
Is there anything, Neil, that gets you pumped about this environment right now? Anything that you can't stop talking about at a dinner party? Is there any investment idea that you pitched to all your friends at the bar?
Well, I mean, Matt, it's a good question because I think there's so many interesting and fascinating things going on. But do you know, it's funny, I'm very pumped about UK assets. I think we have significantly underperformed this rally of the last 3 or 4 years because of Brexit. I think we now have a clear mandate for no political risk for the next 5 years. I think many of us in the UK have been nervous about not only Brexit, but also the rise of the Labour Party and its left-wing policies. So I'm actually pumped about the UK, and I've spent Q4 last year travelling around the world suggesting to investors that they start to revisit, because sterling is cheap, UK assets are cheap, even London property is cheap relative to Shanghai and elsewhere.
Oh, not cheap enough.
And the pound dropping 0.5%. Maybe if they're spending other currencies, make things cheaper still. Neil, thanks very much. Neil Twain, global strategist at Allianz Global Investors. Coming up in the next hour, you'll have Daybreak with Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow, or if you're listening in London on DAB Digital Radio, Bloomberg Surveillance. This is Bloomberg.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Thursday, January 9th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The U.S. and Iran appear to avoid a protracted military conflict.
Gold falls, oil steadies, and global stocks gain as geopolitical concerns ease.
China confirms plans to sign a Phase 1 trade deal in Washington next week.
And signs emerge that M&A activity could pick up for banks.
The House votes on limiting President Trump's options for military action against Iran, plus 2 GOP senators are angry after an administration briefing. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Rough road trip for the Knicks. They went 0-4, lost last night at Utah. College hoops, Big East, a win for Seton Hall, a loss for St. John.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Imagine your asset management firm's operational infrastructure as a competitive advantage. Let SEI show you how at SEIC.com/IMS.
And global stocks are gaining this morning while havens decline. 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 11 points. Dow futures up 88. NASDAQ futures up 44. The DAX in Germany's up 1.25%. CAC in Paris up 0.4%. FTSE 100 up 0.7%. Nikkei 225 in Japan jumped 2.3%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong gained 1.7%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.87%. Yield on the 2-year, 1.57%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.3% or 17 cents at $59.78 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.8% or $13 to $15.47.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1099 against the dollar. The yen 109.45. Nathan.
Well, Karen, concerns over geopolitical risk appear to be easing. The S&P 500 is poised to open near a record as the U.S. and Iran avoid a protracted military conflict. We get more from Bloomberg's Zeneb Fatah in Dubai.
There is a sense that we have made it for another day without a war. President Trump was able to emerge without having to hit Iran. Basically, the Iranian regime gave him every opportunity to be able to do that. The Iranians hit empty plots of land within the sprawling base. And also the Iraqi prime minister was informed by Iran that they were planning to launch the strike ahead of time, which would have allowed him enough time to tell the Americans. But this will definitely rear its ugly head again, and the tensions will escalate at some other point in the future because the overlying issues don't seem to be any closer to resolution.
Iran is still seeking the removal of American troops from the Middle East. The country's president writes on Twitter that Iran's final answer to the killing of its top general will be to kick all U.S. forces out of the region.
The relief rally among global stocks continues this morning. Gold is falling, the yen is weaker, and oil is back near levels seen a week ago. Mohammed Alarian is a Bloomberg opinion columnist and chief economic advisor at Allianz. He spoke with Kevin Cirilli late yesterday on Bloomberg's Sound On in Washington.
Whether it's because markets believe that there'll be no further escalation and or know that central banks will come in with massive liquidity, you get the buy the dip mentality. And that has worked over and over for investors and traders, and that's exactly what happened since the conflict between Iran and the U.S. suddenly escalated.
Mohammed Alarian speaking with Kevin Cirilli on Bloomberg Sound On, heard weekdays at 5 p.m. on Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington.
Now, the relief rally led to a big rebound in Asian stocks overnight. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us now from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Japanese shares outperformed. The Nikkei 225 posting its biggest gain in a month, up 2.3%. Equities in Hong Kong and South Korea also advanced, while stocks in Australia moved higher along with bond yields. China's CSI 300 rose 1.2% to close at 4,164 points, its highest close in almost a year. Data out of China Thursday pointed to steadying signs of inflationary pressures, possibly paving the way for further stimulus from the PBOC. In Singapore, I'm Juliette Bloomberg Daybreak.
Juliette, thank you. On Monday, we reported that China is sending a delegation to Washington next week to sign a Phase 1 trade deal with the White House. Now Beijing is confirming that news, saying Vice Premier Liu He will put pen to paper on Wednesday. Once the first agreement is signed, President Trump said he'll head to Beijing for negotiations on Phase 2.
All right, turning to corporate news now. Apple is making big gains in China. December iPhone shipments in the country grew more than 18% year over year, according to Bloomberg calculations based on government data. That's a significant jump from prior months as China heads into its holiday season.
In Europe, we're seeing signs that M&A activity for banks could pick up in the new year. Here with details is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Roger Hearing joining us live from London. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Karen and Nathan. The big headline is from Jefferies Financial Group, seen as something of a bellwether for Wall Street. The business has reported a 20% decline in revenue over the past fiscal year, but M&A activity has been picking up. CEO Richard Handler and President Brian Friedman say that since then, markets are flourishing and sentiment and momentum are much better than at the same time last year. Jefferies has been seeking to advise companies on bigger mergers and acquisitions and has been building out its teams here in Europe, especially those focused on technology deals. Live in London, I'm Roger Hearing, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Roger, thank you. Shares of Boeing fell nearly 2% yesterday following a plane crash in Iran that killed 176 people. Now we're learning more about the event. Joining us live with details is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Nathan, conflicting signals have emerged about what might have caused the Ukraine-bound jet to plunge from the sky near Tehran minutes after taking off. Iranian authorities initially blamed technical issues and then an engine fire. The Ukrainian embassy in Tehran ruled out terrorism before amending its statement to offer no comment. The crash of the Boeing 737-800 came hours after an Iranian missile attack on two Iraqi military bases. The recently serviced 3-year-old jet went down without a distress call and after its global positioning transmissions were cut off mid-air, which is unusual for a crash. Some aviation safety experts say the plane's sudden fall as it apparently was engulfed in fire might have been from a bomb or missile. Tehran notified the United Nations International Civil Aviation Organization, suggesting Iran might be open to U.S. help in the probe. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. S&P futures are higher this morning, up almost 12 points. Dow futures up 95 and NASDAQ futures up 45. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:07 on Wall Street. Let's bring in Michael Barr to get a check on what else is going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iran. Pelosi spoke shortly after lawmakers from both parties criticized a briefing on Iran by administration officials as vague. Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah.
Probably the worst briefing I've seen, at least on a military issue, in the 9 years I've served in the United States Senate.
However, fellow GOP Senator Roy Blunt says the military strike against General Soleimani eliminated a significant threat.
They were confident that his activities were likely to come to a significant head within days of the day he was killed.
Did Iran intentionally miss or avoid targets that could have led to mass casualties? Military experts are debating whether Iran's missiles were directed at U.S. forces or aimed at sending a message. Bloomberg's Bob Moon reports.
Nearly 24 Iranian missiles fired, 0 casualties. The president noted U.S. forces were safe in their bunkers.
Because of the precautions taken, the dispersal of forces, and an early warning system that worked very well.
There are some reports the Iranians made a warning call to the Iraqis as the Ayatollah coordinated the attacks from a military control room. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley was asked why no casualties.
I think it has more to do with the defensive techniques that our forces used
as opposed to intent.
For its part, Iran is signaling the message was received. Its foreign minister tweeting the country has concluded proportionate measures. Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Residents in the path of wildfires in southeast Australia have been urged to evacuate if they don't intend to defend their homes. Hot and windy conditions are forecast to escalate the fires over the next 2 days. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo delivered a State of the State address Wednesday outlining his vision for progress on addressing intolerance and legalizing adult use of marijuana in New York. Cuomo is navigating a looming $6 billion budget shortfall. We're learning the MTA pulled about 300 new subway cars service overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. There are questions about the safety issue involving their doors. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, the Knicks are coming home. Things did not go well out west. They lost in Phoenix. They lost twice in L.A. And last night they were undermanned and were beaten by red-hot Utah 128-104. Seventh win in a row for the Jazz. The Knicks were without their top two scorers, Julius Randle for personal reasons, Marcus Morris with an injured neck. Seton Hall and St. John's, top and bottom of the Big East right now. The Pirates are 3-0 and sit in first place. They got 24 points from their star player, Miles Powell. They won at Xavier 83-71. A rough one for the Red Storm, down by 27 at halftime. Blown out by arch rival Georgetown 87-66 and now 0-3 in conference play. There are two college basketball teams still undefeated. Both Auburn and San Diego State won last night. So did Duke and Kansas, ranked second and third. They both won easily on the road. Giants fans still wondering who is Joe Judge. They could learn more about their new coach today. Judge will meet the media just as Mike McCarthy did yesterday in Dallas, new coach of the Cowboys, and Matt Rule in Charlotte, now coaching the Panthers. He said once he heard about the contract they were going to give him, he wasn't interested in the Giants job.
When they offered the job, and the biggest thing I'll say is when they offered, a chance to be here for 7 years, it spoke to me about the chance, the belief that we were going to do this together and do it the right way. And there was no doubt, and there's really no doubt before from my family, and there was really no doubt for me after just having that synergy that we were going to be here. So my agent, I know he talks to different people, but for me, the only person I talked to was Mr. Tepper.
That's the owner of the Panthers who gave Rule a staggering contract, 7 years, $62 million. Once the Giants heard about that, they passed on Rule and hired Judge. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. In other sports news, Verizon is placing a bigger bet on gambling. The company, which launched its Yahoo sports betting venture in New Jersey in November, now plans to expand its online gambling partnership with MGM Resorts International to at least 5 more states this year. Several states have legalized sports betting since the Supreme Court ended a federal prohibition in 2018. Futures moving higher. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his Ph.D. at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Tom McKenzie.
Former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn speaking in Beirut after his dramatic escape from Tokyo. Let's have some reaction to that now. Sophia University law professor Stephen Givens joins us from Tokyo. What did you make of Ghosn's press conference, his performance? Was he convincing?
In many ways, I think it was a masterful performance. And he very convincingly made the case, first of all, that the initial charges brought against him were weak, flimsy. He also made a convincing case that this was part of a palace coup that was trying to scuttle his plans to merge Nissan and Renault. And he also, I think, was very convincing about the Japanese criminal justice system, that he and other criminal suspects here undergo procedures that are cruel and not in keeping with international standards.
We're clearly a long way from any resolution between the two sides on this. How potentially damaging is this to Japan Inc.?
I think it's very damaging. He said that there's been $10 billion wiped off the market cap of Nissan, which is true. Overall, I think that the damage both to Nissan, to Renault and Japan has been quite serious.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks rising across Europe and Asia, and U.S. stock index futures are climbing, extending a relief rally after the U.S. and Iran appear to step back from a deeper military conflict. The yen and gold declining, oil steady after a plunge. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 11 points, Dow futures up 96, NASDAQ futures up 44. The DAX in Germany's up 1.3%. 10-year Treasury little change, yield 1.87%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.58%. NYMEX crude oil little changed at $59.61 a barrel, and COMEX gold is down 0.9% or $13.40 at $15.46.80 an ounce. The euro 1.1102 against the dollar, British pound 1.3025. And the yen is at 109.44. And today we are watching for the weekly report on initial jobless claims out at 8:30 Wall Street time. Then at 9:45, it's a Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Karen. The House is set to vote today on a proposal to limit President Donald Trump's ability to take military action against Iran. The vote comes amid intensifying Democratic criticism of the U.S. drone strike that had killed a top Iranian general. Iranian investigators say the crew of the Ukrainian jetliner that crashed outside Tehran never made a radio call for help. Wednesday's crash killed all 176 people on board, many of them from Iran and also Canada. The plane crashed just hours after Iran launched a barrage of missiles at U.S. forces. Iranian officials blamed mechanical trouble for the crash. In the NBA, the Knicks lost along with the Celtics, Wizards, and Warriors. In the NHL, the Capitals lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Jeremy Stretch joins us now, head of G10 FX strategy at CIBC, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Well, we certainly saw haven currencies jump after the killing of Soleimani and the Iranian missile response. And now, with tensions easing and havens backing off, where do you see opportunity now in the currency space, Jeremy?
Well, it is fascinating to see the sort of round trip that we've seen in the risk environment over the course of the last 7 sessions, because, of course, it was only this time last week when we were sitting down for the first session of the new year and looking for a risk-on start to the year. But in view of the pullback in terms of those risk dynamics, then I think there is and will continue to be scope in terms of some of those high-yielding emerging markets. Currencies such as Turkish lira, for example, I think will continue to make gains. So I think it is very much the case of if we are in an environment, and of course we have to be mindful of ongoing risks of renewed uncertainties. But in the current environment, I think it is going to be the case that those higher-yielding emerging market currencies and those more risk-orientated currencies will continue to trade positively over the course of the next few sessions.
Where are you seeing those uncertainties? Are you talking about the possibility of Middle East tensions returning, or is it just the uncertainties that we've been talking about over the last several months about a global slowdown?
Well, it is true that obviously we have seen a rowing back or a walking back in terms of those tensions in the Middle East over the course of the last 24 hours or so. But I think we still have to be mindful that there is still some concern that there could still be further actions to be forthcoming from that region. So, of course, one hopes that we have seen a protracted and prolonged reduction in terms of those tensions. But as is much the case with the Iranians, they do often serve their revenge as a menu that's best served cold. So I think in that context we have to still be a little cautious in terms of extrapolating this easing in tensions. But, of course, there are those other global uncertainties to consider. And, of course, the Iranian events over the course of the last week or so has taken the market's eye away from the ongoing issues in terms of global trade tensions. Now, one hopes that, of course, that global trade environment will continue to prove constructive. But there is and will continue to be some debate as to how upbeat we should or how significant we should anticipate an improved trade environment through the course of the rest of the year beyond the geopolitical risks.
If there do continue to be geopolitical risks, the possibility of that at least, how do you advise currency traders to position for that possibility?
Well, it is a difficult one because, of course, trying to position for geopolitical concerns, which are very difficult to foresee, is a tough environment. So in that context, you have to be mindful and you have to be nimble in terms of your positioning. So I think in that context, you have to be very headline driven in terms of those dynamics. But I think also it probably makes sense to look a little further afield in terms of beyond pure spot positions, and then perhaps looking for a little bit of optionality in terms of the trading strategies to try and deal with some of those uncertainties which you can't necessarily foresee.
We got that positive manufacturing data out of Germany this morning. Does that make the euro look more attractive to you now?
Well, it was something of a surprise in terms of the industrial production numbers, but also having said that, we did see some fairly disappointing manufacturing or factory orders data coming from from the sort of the regional, the trade body. So I think we need to be mindful that, of course, we are still talking about data in Q4, and in a sense that's still reflective of the deterioration that we saw in trade dynamics through the course of the second half of last year. But if we are going to see a more constructive trade backdrop going forward, and we also see some degree of resolution or at least easing in tensions vis-a-vis the Brexit process, which is also contingent on the European growth cycle, then I think the retreat that we have seen in the euro over the course of the last few sessions, backing away from that 112 threshold, probably does provide some opportunities here. So I think this dip in euro dollar should provide some better opportunities in terms of putting on longer term strategies through the course of this year, because we would expect the euro to be ending the year in the upper teens versus the US dollar.
Jeremy Stretch, head of G10FX strategy at Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Thanks again for being with us. Always good getting your insights on Bloomberg Daybreak. And just taking a look at the currency markets at the moment, the euro, a little bit of weakness against the dollar at 111.01. The yen is falling as well. It's at 109.44 against the dollar as haven currencies retreat and a relief rally takes hold in markets as tensions between the U.S. and Iran do appear to be easing. S&P futures higher by 10.5 points right now. Dow futures up 86. NASDAQ futures a gain of 40 points. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.86%. 2-year Treasury at 1.57%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Jobs take the spotlight today with the weekly snapshot of jobless claims. This after ADP reported a better-than-expected gain of 202,000 private jobs in December. The Labor Department issues its report tomorrow. China says its vice premier will travel to Washington next week to sign the first phase of the trade deal with the U.S. President Donald Trump had already announced that the signing ceremony would happen on January 15th, but this is China's first confirmation of the signing. Stocks closed higher yesterday on Wall Street. Earlier, the market hit a new intraday record after President Trump suggested that further military action against Iranian targets was not necessary. The rally lost some steam toward the end amid new reports of fresh rocket attacks in Baghdad. When it was over, the Dow was up 161 points, the S&P jumped 16, and the NASDAQ was up 61. And the stock futures right now don't look too bad. Dow futures up 94. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Some ideas can be bad for business, like a band recording a song underwater. No radio station would ever play that song. Or like Barclaycard, making a repayment calculator that shows how a small extra repayment each month adds up to paying them much less in interest. But Barclaycard have actually made their repayment calculator, so you should definitely use it. Take control. Start today. Barclaycard. Terms and conditions apply.
At TradePoint, you can get your building essentials at low prices, all in one place, making big jobs smaller. Like 25 kilogram Thistle multi-finish plaster for only £6.74. For all you need, when you need it. Get to TradePoint or go to tradepoint.co.uk.
Do you do the same thing every weekend? You know, meet up with the same friends for brunch, browse around the same shops, eat the same Saturday night takeaway. Mine's a lamb balti with mushroom pilau rice. Snuggle up next to the same person and watch the same brain-numbing reality TV. Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this.
Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go!
Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are rising as concerns over geopolitical risk appear to be easing. The S&P 500 is set to open near a record as the U.S. and Iran avoid a protracted military conflict. Here with more is Bloomberg's Aneb Fatah in Dubai.
President Trump was able to emerge without having to hit Iran. The Iranians hit empty plots of land, and also the Iraqi prime minister was informed by Iran that they were planning to launch the strike ahead of time, which would have allowed him enough time to tell the Americans.
It has the relief rally continuing this morning. Stocks in Japan rose 2.3%. European averages are higher, and S&P futures are up 0.33%.
Another bullish note for investors. China confirms it will sign the first phase of a trade deal with the U.S. next week. Vice Premier Liu He will travel to Washington for the ceremony.
On the economic front, we have remarks from several Federal Reserve officials. Richard Clarida, John Williams, James Bullard, and Charles Evans all speak at separate events today.
Shares of Bed Bath & Beyond are down more than 9%. The retailer's withdrawing its financial guidance following another quarter of declining sales. We get details from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Same-store sales, a key measure for retailers, fell 8.3% in the company's third quarter, the 11th consecutive decline. The company also withdrew its full-year outlook, saying only that profit and sales will remain under pressure in the current quarter. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Charlie, thank you. Shares of Boeing fell nearly 2% yesterday following a plane crash in Iran that killed 176 people. Now we're learning more about the event. Joining us live with the details is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Karen, Iran's Civil Aviation Organization says the Boeing 737-800 tried to turn back soon after takeoff before plunging to earth in a ball of fire. Iran has invoked an international agreement to get assistance for the probe from other countries, including the U.S. Iranian authorities initially blamed technical issues and then an engine fire. Some aviation safety experts are saying the plane's sudden fall might have been from a bomb or missile. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. S&P futures are higher, up 10 points this morning. Dow futures up 82. NASDAQ futures up 38. The DAX in Germany is up 1.2%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.86%. And the yield on the 2-year, 1.57%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.25% or 16 cents at 59.77 a barrel. And the euro is at 1.1105 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thank you. It's 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Nathan. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says members will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iran. The War Powers resolution would require the president to cease military actions against Iran unless authorized by Congress or in response to an imminent threat. Meanwhile, lawmakers were briefed yesterday on the intelligence that led President Trump to kill top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, but some Republicans are not happy. GOP Senator Mike Lee was furious with the briefing, calling it insulting.
Every time we got close, they'd say, well, we can't discuss that here because it's really sensitive. We're in a skiff. We're in a secure underground bunker where all electronic devices have to be checked at the door, and they still refuse to tell us. I find that really upsetting.
Fellow GOP Senator Rand Paul was also angry, saying the Constitution clearly states Congress, not the executive branch, authorizes acts of war. However, another Republican Senator, Lindsey Graham, slammed Lee and Paul.
Go debate all you want to. I'm going to debate you. Trust me, I'm going to let people know that at this moment in time, to play this game with the War Powers Act, which I think is unconstitutional, is that whether you mean to or not, you're empowering the enemy.
If some New York area public transit riders believe their subway cars were so 1960, they were right. We've learned the MTA pulled its fleet of almost 330 brand new subway cars from its service Tuesday into Wednesday. It was in response to a safety issue involving their doors. The MTA swapped out their new cars with spare cars, including some from the 1960s. A rabbi whose home was the site of a stabbing attack in suburban New York is thanking state and local officials who reached out to the Orthodox Jewish community. Chaim Rottenberg says his community wants to work toward greater unity following the assault on the seventh night of Hanukkah.
The unifying event is a divine call for soul searching rather than finger pointing and accusations. Let us reflect in words on how we can eradicate evil from its source.
Governor Andrew Cuomo delivered a State of the State address yesterday outlining his vision for progress on addressing intolerance and legalizing adult use of marijuana in New York. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. We're coming up to 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, it was going to be hard enough for the Knicks last night. Utah going for a 7th straight win, and then add that the Knicks were without their top two scorers. Julius Randle for personal reasons. Marcus Morris has an injured neck. Sure enough, all Jazz, 128-104. Knicks go 0-4 on the road trip, host New Orleans tomorrow. The Nets, who've lost 7 in a row, will host Miami. The much-improved Heat won last night at Indiana. They are 27-10. The Nets are just 16-20, in part because Kyrie Irving hasn't played in nearly 2 months.
I'm doing a lot better. You know, it's just been a lot of questions that I've had for what would be the best case scenario for me to go out there and play and what I can possibly play through with a shoulder injury. You know, it's very unique because it's the first time I've ever had such a significant feeling in my shoulder where I'm going up to shoot jump shots and I can't really lift my shoulder.
Big East last night, nightmare first half for St. John's, trailed Georgetown by 27, ended up losing 87-66, now 0-3 in conference play. Seton Hall is 3-0. The Pirates won at Xavier, 83-71. 2 days ago, Matt Rule was supposed to interview for the Giants coaching job. He was believed to be the front runner for the job. Instead, he scrapped the interview after getting hired by the Carolina Panthers.
I will work tirelessly each day to bring you guys a championship, to bring you a championship, because that's what this region deserves. And that's what the players who came before us deserve. And that's what the guys in that locker room, as I've had a chance to meet them, that's what they deserve. And as I said so many years ago, how do you do that? You just start building.
Panthers made an offer Rule couldn't refuse. 7 years, $62 million. So the Giants instead hired Joe Judge. He'll meet the media today. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. It is 5:37 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now with a cover on SoftBank and why its problems are much bigger than WeWork. Also in this week's issue, the company that's looking to make big law more robotic. Jeff Muskas contributed to the story for Bloomberg Business Week.
The sales pitch is basically, okay, well, we've had Wilson Sonsini lawyers set up this series of prompts that can get you to a point where with as little as 10% of the costs of a typical compliance exercise, you can sort of get yourself compliant and continue to update as needed.
And you can read more about this and other stories in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. And listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly weekdays at 2 p.m. Wall Street time here on Bloomberg Radio. It's 5:38 on Wall Street. Time now for the Tri-State Business Report. And here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Hey, Nathan. Westchester home sellers discounted their way to a strong fourth quarter. Owners in the suburbs north of the city cut an average of 4.1% from their last asking price, the most for any quarter since the end of 2014, according to appraiser Miller Samuel and brokerage Douglas Elliman Real Estate. Deals rose in the New York boroughs for the first time since 2017. Purchases in Brooklyn climbing 2.9% in the fourth quarter from a year ago. Buyers are returning after years of escalating prices dimmed Brooklyn's status as a haven from Manhattan's high costs. Morgan Stanley bid aggressively to win $325 million in bonds auctioned off by New Jersey. The bank paying a yield of 2.07% for a portion of the securities that come due in 20 years at a much smaller premium than the state paid on similar bonds back in 2016. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
All right, thanks, Ed. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WBBM in Chicago, I'm talking about Kraft Heinz poaching a rising star from Campbell in a rare outside hire.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WLW in Cincinnati, I'm reporting that buying a home is more affordable than renting in just over half of the nation's housing markets.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. China said it will open up oil and gas exploration to private and foreign firms.
I'm Ed Corey on KFBK in Sacramento. I'm reporting Amazon says its Ring subsidiary has fired at least 4 employees for improperly seeking access to customer data.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. And some other stories we're watching. The CEO of British Airways parent IAG is retiring after 15 years at the helm. Willie Walsh faced down unions and cut costs at British Airways. He'll be replaced by Luis Gallego, who currently runs the group's Spanish airline. And 2019 was officially the worst year ever for British retailers as holiday sales were hit by brutal price pressure and the shift to e-commerce. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa. On a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
Hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
The House will vote to limit President Trump's ability to exercise certain military action.
House Democrats will take up legislation to restrain President Trump's military powers. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in a statement, quote, "To honor our duty to keep the American people safe, the House will move forward with a war powers resolution to limit the president's military actions regarding Iran." I'm Reed Binion reporting.
Senator Richard Blumenthal reacts after a classified briefing on the killing of Iran's top general.
In some ways, I'm more frightened about this situation than I was before.
Well, Blumenthal says he hopes the situation with Iran is de-escalating. Republican Senator Tom Cotton says he has no doubt.
Iran didn't just take an off-ramp, they took a U-turn because they know they have no capability to fight against America.
Linda Kenyon, Capitol Hill.
Democrats say President Trump is asking Americans to trust the very intelligence reports he's often disparaged. I'm John Trout.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance? What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are rising across Europe and Asia, and U.S. stock index futures are climbing, extending a relief rally after the U.S. and Iran appear to step back from a deeper military conflict. The yen and gold declining. Oil is steady after a plunge. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 10 points. Dow futures up 81. NASDAQ futures up 38. The DAX in Germany is up 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32nd, yield 1.86%. The yield on the 2-year 1.58%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.1%, now up 6 cents at $59.66 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.75% at $11.60 at $15.4860 an ounce. The euro 1.1111 against the dollar. British pound 1.3041, and the yen at 109.42. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, Democratic and some Republican lawmakers are angry after an intelligence briefing from the Trump administration concerning the U.S. strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. They felt that the briefing was arrogant. GOP Senator Mike Lee says the administration was treating senators like, quote, little boys and girls. And he said that what got under his skin was that they were told, don't debate this in public. Meanwhile, the House will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iran. In the NBA, the Knicks lost along with the Celtics, Wizards, and Warriors. In the NHL, the Capitals lost. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
We're coming up to 5:49 on Wall Street. It is time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion, and we're joined live from our Berlin bureau by Bloomberg editorial board member Andreas Kluth, who writes this morning about the rising risk of nuclear war. Good morning, Andreas. I take it you mean this is well beyond the current tensions we're seeing between the U.S. and Iran.
Absolutely. In fact, the title of the article is The Rising Risk of Nuclear Proliferation, which then also raises the risk of something going wrong down the line and an actual war.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about what you see as this rising risk. I mean, is the collapse of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal part of the picture here?
Yes, or more specifically, the fact that Iran has got itself in this position through the use of civilian nuclear power that it could very quickly break out and get the bomb. And in that case, several other countries in the region, Israel already has the bomb, but Saudi Arabia and Turkey would almost certainly follow and would also be able to do it very quickly. And that's part of the wider picture, the bigger problem, which is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which turns 50 years old this year, and there's a big conference coming up in New York in April to review it, allows countries to do that, and therefore it gives them the wrong incentives. Basically, it means a lot of countries will try, it's called a soft arms race, will try to be in this position of being able to break out and develop a bomb very quickly because they already have the other kinds of nuclear technology.
Raises the broader question, doesn't it, of whether the traditional nuclear non-proliferation treaty is adequate to defend against these kinds of possibilities of smaller countries like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, from breaking out from nuclear power. Is it?
No, I would say no, based on my research and you know, in the article, the tack I took, or my interest was really game theory. I looked at this branch of mathematics, game theory, that's been used since the 1960s, since the Cold War, in economics and other stuff, but also in nuclear war. And the bigger problem, and this is the real worry, is once you look at the games and the mathematics of the games and the incentives for the players, that would be the adversaries, the enemies, in the Cold War, they were very stable. So even the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was for instance, in the game of Prisoner's Dilemma, a stable outcome, and we did not ever shoot at each other, the Soviet Union and the U.S. Today, you have many, many more players, many more kinds of nuclear weapons, including small ones that could be used on a battlefield or just to get into a bunker or something like that, and many other ways to miscalculate, to misread each other's intentions. So the games are becoming more complex, and basically all of that should be very scary if you think of the consequences of something going wrong.
Well, when you talk about game theory, how can we change the game? How can the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty or some other treaty be adopted or adapted to some of these threats of, smaller nuclear attacks?
So this was the big surprise to me as doing the research, because I'm obviously not a mathematician, but there's actually some of the games have reached their mathematical limits, but the way to solve them, to get out of it again, is to introduce a new kind of player called a mediator. And that could be in some games a traffic light, like why don't you run over each other at an intersection? Well, because there's a traffic light, that's the mediator, all of you trust it. But it doesn't have to be a traffic light. The mediator can be more savvy, it can be human, it can be an organization, and it withholds and gives information so that no miscalculations take place. And I think we need good, trusted advisors, basically, to get between, in conflicts with Iran, between the parties. It cannot be Trump, it cannot be, the Iranians, it could be someone from the European Union or Switzerland, and also to show up at this review conference for the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and just make sure we understand the way rational people can make rational decisions that end in disaster and then to prevent it.
Interesting question of whether there is any rationality out there to defend against this threat, but we'll have to leave it there for now. Bloomberg editorial board member Andreas Kluth with us from our Berlin bureau this morning, and you can read his column. It is called "The Risk of Nuclear Proliferation and War is Growing," and more at Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal. Karen?
Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Danaher and a subsidiary are being sued in Illinois by a former in-house attorney who says she was fired after she warned higher-ups about behavior that could raise Me Too issues. Personal information used for medical research and safety would be exempt from California's new privacy law under a bill before the state legislature. And in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo says he will make reforms to worker classifications a priority. Cuomo says workers in the gig economy must be protected from economic exploitation.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal development we're watching. Senate Democrats pressuring House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to end her standoff over the impeachment trial of President Trump. The push comes as signs increasingly point to little chance of winning concessions from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. For more on the trial, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks with former federal prosecutor Robert Mintz, who's a partner at McCarter and English.
With the power that Mitch McConnell has over the Senate Republicans, what's the most likely outcome here? Dismissal after opening arguments?
Well, certainly if you're Mitch McConnell, you don't like the idea of calling a witness that you don't know what they're going to say. In the Clinton case, all of the witnesses that were called, every single one of them that were called on the Senate side had already previously testified before the House committee. So there was nothing new there. There were no surprises. Mitch McConnell is not going to want a witness like a John Bolton or a Mick Mulvaney to show up and testify in a Senate trial when they have not gone on the record previously, and particularly with John Bolton, nobody knows exactly what he's going to say. So he's going to do everything he can to persuade those four senators that additional witnesses are not necessary. But at the same time, Mitch McConnell's ultimate goal here is to preserve his Senate majority, and he has to be mindful of the fact that there are four senators out there, perhaps even a number more than that, who are going to be in potentially tight races, and they do run the risk of being criticized for not allowing additional witnesses who might well shed additional facts and provide additional evidence on some of these key questions, to at least give them the opportunity to testify so that senators could have the full picture. And that's the balancing act that he's going to have to walk.
Has the House strategy of not going to court to get those witnesses who wouldn't testify, like John Bolton and Mick Mulvaney, has that strategy backfired?
Well, that's a great question, because clearly what the Democrats were doing was playing to public opinion here, trying to sway public opinion without having to call those additional witnesses, which would have caused the process to be long and drawn out. And I think the calculation was made that the public just might lose interest in this process, and that Democrats felt that they had enough evidence. That didn't necessarily play out, I think, exactly as Democrats had hoped, since public opinion does not seem to have been swayed by that testimony. And now they're trying to gather more evidence, get some more momentum by putting pressure on the Republicans to call additional witnesses. And John Bolton has now thrown a live grenade into that mix by saying that if subpoenaed, he will appear.
And that's Robert Mintz, a partner at McCorder & English, speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures up 9 points this morning. Dow futures up 74. NASDAQ futures up 36. And the 10-year Treasury up 1/32. Yield 1.87%. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
We're not athletes, we're cancer beaters. Sign up to Race for Life now and get 30% off entry until the 31st of January in partnership with Tesco.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
A move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Thursday, January 9th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The U.S. and Iran appear to avoid a protracted military conflict.
Gold falls, oil steadies, and global stocks gain as geopolitical concerns ease.
China confirms plans to sign a Phase 1 trade deal in Washington next week.
And signs emerge that M&A activity could pick up for banks.
The House votes on limiting President Trump's options for military action against Iran. Plus, 2 GOP senators are angry after an administration briefing. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Rough road trip for the Knicks. They went 0-4, lost last night at Utah. College hoops, Big East, a win for Seton Hall, a loss for St. John.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Since its founding 50 years ago, SEI has provided investment managers and asset owners with robust infrastructure platforms and flexible outsourcing solutions. Go to SEIC.com/IMS.
And global stocks are gaining this morning while havens decline. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 10 points. Dow futures up 82. NASDAQ futures up 37. The DAX in Germany is up 1.1%. CAC in Paris up 0.3%. And the FTSE 100 up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32. Yield 1.87%. And the yield on the 2-year 1.58%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.2% or 13 cents at 59.76 a barrel, and COMEX gold is down 0.8% or $12.10 at 15.48.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1112 against the dollar, the yen 109.43. And this data check brought to you by IBKR, the professionals' gateway to the world's markets. Their clients enjoy lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, forex, and fixed income from a single integrated account. Learn more at IBKR.com. Nathan.
Karen, concerns over geopolitical risk appear to be easing. The S&P 500 is poised to to open near a record as the U.S. and Iran avoid a protracted military conflict. We get more from Bloomberg's Zineb Fattah in Dubai.
There is a sense that we have made it for another day without a war. President Trump was able to emerge without having to hit Iran. Basically, the Iranian regime gave him every opportunity to be able to do that. The Iranians hit empty plots of land within the sprawling base. And also the Iraqi prime minister was informed by Iran that they were planning to launch the strike ahead of time, which would have allowed him enough time to tell the Americans.
Still, Iran is not backing down on calling for the removal of U.S. troops from the Middle East. The country's president writes on Twitter that Iran's final answer to the killing of its top general will be to kick all U.S. forces out of the region.
The relief rally among global stocks continues this morning. Gold is falling, the yen is weaker, and oil is back near levels seen a week ago. Mohammed Alarian is a Bloomberg opinion columnist and chief economic advisor at Allianz. He spoke with Kevin Cirilli late yesterday on Bloomberg's Sound On in Washington.
Whether it's because markets believe that there'll be no further escalation and or know that central banks will come in with massive liquidity, you get the buy the dip mentality. And that has worked over and over for investors and traders, and that's exactly what happened since the conflict between Iran and the U.S. suddenly escalated.
Mohammed Alarian speaking with Kevin Cirilli on Bloomberg Sound On, heard weekdays at 5 p.m. on Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington.
Well, the relief rally led to a big rebound in Asian stocks overnight. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us now from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Japanese shares outperformed. The Nikkei 225 posting its biggest gain in a month, up 2.3%. Equities in Hong Kong and South Korea also advanced, while stocks in Australia moved higher along with bond yields. China's CSI 300 rose 1.2% to close at 4,164 points, its highest close in almost a year. Data out of China Thursday pointed to steadying signs of inflationary pressures, possibly paving the way for further stimulus from the PBOC. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sally, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thank you. On Monday, we reported that China is sending a delegation to Washington next week to sign a Phase 1 trade deal with the White House. Now Beijing is confirming that news, saying Vice Premier Liu He will put pen to paper on Wednesday. Once the first agreement is signed, President Trump says he'll head to Beijing for negotiations on Phase 2.
Turning to corporate news now, Apple's making big gains in China. December iPhone shipments in the country grew more than 18% year over year, according to Bloomberg calculations based on government data. That's a significant jump from prior months as China heads into its holiday season.
In Europe, we're seeing signs that M&A activity for banks could pick up in the new year. Here are the details as Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Roger Hearing joining us live from London. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Karen and Nathan. The big headline is from Jefferies Financial Group, often seen as a bellwether for Wall Street. The business has reported a 20% decline in revenue over the past fiscal year, but M&A activity has been picking up. CEO Richard Handler and President Brian Friedman say that since then, markets are flourishing and sentiment and momentum are much better than at the same time last year. Jefferies has been seeking to advise companies on bigger mergers and acquisitions and has been building out its teams here in Europe, especially those focused on technology deals. Live in London, I'm Roger Hearing, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, Roger. Shares of Boeing fell nearly 2% yesterday following a plane crash in Iran that killed 176 people. And now we're learning more about that event. Joining us live with the details is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning. Conflicting signals have emerged about what might have caused the Ukraine-bound jet to plunge from the sky near Tehran minutes after taking off. Iranian authorities initially blamed technical issues and then an engine fire. The Ukrainian embassy in Tehran ruled out terrorism before amending its statement to offer no comment. The crash of the Boeing 737-800 came hours after an Iranian missile attack on two Iraqi military bases. The recently serviced 3-year-old jet went down without a distress call and after its global positioning transmissions were cut off mid-air, which is unusual for a crash. Some aviation safety experts say the plane's sudden fall, as it apparently was engulfed in fire, might have been from a bomb or missile. Tehran notified the United Nations International Civil Aviation Organization, suggesting Iran might be open to U.S. help in the probe. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. And futures this morning on the rise with S&P futures up 9.5 points, Dow futures up 88, NASDAQ futures up 36, the 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.87%, and NYMEX crude oil, little change, up 5 cents at 59.67 a barrel. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg. All
right, Karen, thank you. It's 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iran. Pelosi spoke shortly after lawmakers from both parties criticized a briefing on Iran by administration officials as vague. Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah.
Probably the worst briefing I've seen, at least on a military issue, in the 9 years I've served in the United States Senate.
However, fellow GOP Senator Roy Blunt says the military strike against General Soleimani eliminated a significant threat.
They were confident that his activities were likely to come to a significant head within days of the day he was killed.
With a growing number of Senate Democrats saying it's about time for House Speaker Pelosi to send the articles of impeachment passed last month over to the Senate, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell again criticized Pelosi over the delay. On the Senate floor, McConnell says that it seems even Democrats are losing their patience.
There will be no haggling with the House over Senate procedure. We will not cede our authority to try this impeachment. The House Democrats' turn is over.
Pelosi continues to refuse turning over the articles of impeachment until they are given more details into the Republican-led trial. Residents in the path of wildfires in southeast Australia have been urged to evacuate if they don't intend to defend their homes. Hot and windy conditions are forecast to escalate in the next 2 days. Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan say they plan to step back from their royal duties and split their time between Britain and North America. Governor Andrew Cuomo delivered a State of the State address yesterday outlining his vision for progress on addressing intolerance and legalizing adult use of marijuana in New York. We're learning the MTA pulled about 300 new subway cars from service overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. There are questions about a safety issue involving their doors. The MTA swapped out the new cars with spare cars, including some that date back to the 1960s. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, the Knicks are coming home out west. They lost in Phoenix, then twice in L.A. last night. Undermanned as they were beaten by red-hot Utah, 128-104. Ex-Knick Emmanuel Mudiay, 28 points, as the Jazz won their 7th in a row. The Knicks were without their top 2 scorers, Julius Randle for personal reasons, Marcus Morris with a sore neck. Seton Hall and St. John's, top and bottom of the Big East right now. The Pirates are 3-0. They got 24 points from Miles Powell. They won at Xavier 83-71. Rough night for the Red Storm, down 27 at halftime. Blown out by Georgetown, 87-66, and now 0-3 in conference play. There are 2 college basketball teams still undefeated. Both Auburn and San Diego State won last night. So did Duke and Kansas, ranked 2nd and 3rd. They both won easily on the road. Giants fans still wondering who is Joe Judge. They could learn more about their new coach today. Judge will meet the media, just as 2 other coaches just hired did yesterday, Mike McCarthy in Dallas and Matt Rule in Charlotte. He said once he heard about the contract the Panthers were going to give him, he wasn't interested in the Giants job.
Offered, a chance to be here for 7 years. It spoke to me about the chance, the belief that we were going to do this together and do it the right way. And there was no doubt. And there's really no doubt the night before for my family. And there was really no doubt for me after just having that synergy that we were going to be here. So my agent, I know he talks to different people, but for me, the only person I talked to was Mr. Tepper.
That's David Tepper, new owner of the Panthers, who gave Rule a staggering contract, 7 years, $62 million. The Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. And in other sports news, Verizon is placing a bigger bet on gambling. The company, which launched its Yahoo Sports betting venture in New Jersey in November, now plans to expand its online gambling partnership with MGM Resorts International to at least 5 more states this year. Several states have legalized sports betting since the Supreme Court ended a federal prohibition on it in 2018. Relief rally continues around the world. S&P futures higher by 10 points right now. Dow futures up 93. NASDAQ futures a gain of almost 37 points. DAX in Germany's up 1.25% right now. 10-year Treasury yield 1.86%. You are listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
"25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways. Named world's best airline by Skytrax, our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Down the middle of the 10. Got to the 5. Tumbles in. Touchdown!
TuneIn has your NFL playoffs live all weekend. So when you're running to the store or stuck in traffic, TuneIn has you covered.
He's taking contact, and he got it in! Touchdown! Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Search NFL and get prepared for the action.
Touchdown! Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
Bitcoin has climbed at the highest level since November after breaching the $8,000 price threshold. Concerns about an escalation in the conflict between the U.S. and Iran are seen as contributing to the rally in Bitcoin, which is not managed by a government. To discuss, we are joined by BitPay Chief Commercial Officer Sunny Singh. Thanks so much for joining us. We've been in this trading range. We're not overbought at these levels. But that key 8,000 level means we could be breaking out of this trading range. Do you see the price increase recently as technically driven?
Yeah, so great question, actually. I'm obviously not a technical trader, but again, technical and high-frequency trading is really what drives this market in Bitcoin. And anytime you have an unforeseen circumstance, like the Iran incident that happened a couple of days ago, that adds some new buyers to the market. They weren't expecting that, and that bumps it up. And that little bump actually in buying pressure really drives it to be up next to, 20% in 2 days.
So I am shocked to hear that it's moving higher with gold and seen as a safe haven. How is that possible?
We see that happen a lot. Now, I don't think people actually went and sold their GE stock and all that and bought Bitcoin. But I see what happens is just a little bit of people start buying Bitcoin, and that, with the technical trading, really bumps it up and makes it go a lot higher, a lot faster.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:17 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Iran says the Boeing jet that crashed yesterday tried to turn back soon after takeoff, but the pilots didn't flag anything unusual. Iran invoked an international pact to get help from foreign investigators, including the US. The World Bank cut its global growth outlook due to worsening prospects in China and the euro area. At the same time, it says GDP may pick up a bit thanks to better growth in emerging markets. China's Liu He will travel to Washington next week to sign the Phase 1 trade deal. President Trump has said a signing ceremony would occur Wednesday. And even a moderate US recession could send Treasury yields nearer zero. That's according to Federal Reserve economist Michael Kiley, who says a move that low will limit the Fed's tools to aid the economy. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
All right, Hannah, thank you. S&P futures up about 10 points. Dow futures up 91. NASDAQ futures up 36. The DAX in Germany's up 1.25%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.86%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.57%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.2% or 11 cents at $59.72 a barrel, and COMEX gold is down 0.8% or $11.80 at $15.4840 an ounce. The euro 1.1111 against the dollar. The yen 109.42. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the House is set to vote today on a proposal to limit President Donald Trump's ability to take military action against Iran. The vote comes amid intensifying Democratic criticism of the U.S. drone strike that killed a top Iranian general. Responding to popular demand, Facebook will soon give users the option to see fewer political and social issue advertisements in their feed. This new setting, which will also be available on Instagram, is part of an effort to give people more control over what they see ahead of the 2020 presidential election. In the NBA, the Knicks lost along with the Celtics, Wizards, and Warriors. In the NHL, the Capitals lost. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael, thank you. It is now 6:20 on Wall Street. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. And good morning, I'm John Tucker. The start of the new year has brought with it a round trip in risk assets. And let's bring in our next guest this morning. Peter Dixon is Global Equities Economist at Commerce Bank. He joins us from London this morning. Peter, thanks for being with us. Geopolitics, of course, has been in the driver's seat. Let's torture this metaphor a little more and look in the back seat now. What's driving equities now?
Well, I think it's primarily because the geopolitical situation appears to have calmed down a little bit. I mean, obviously, the Iranians have vented their spleen with regard to getting some form of revenge for last Friday's attacks. And, I think both sides are very keen to de-escalate. And as a consequence, those traders who are somewhat unclear about where things were heading have a little less on clarity, shall we say, about the geopolitical situation now. And I think they're just therefore, getting back onto the wagon that rolled so strongly during 2019. Whether it will continue is another matter, but for the moment at least, I think we're trading a relief rally.
What did we learn from the round trip in risk assets that we saw with the rise in geopolitical tensions? I guess the usual relationships seem to have held up.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the one added concern that we would have at this stage is, the economic cycle is already fairly long in the tooth. There are concerns about how strong the global economy is, and of course we've got the US-China trade dispute rumbling on in the background. And I think under those circumstances, investors, obviously are going to remain nervous. And just because we've got rid of the geopolitical tensions, it doesn't mean to say that we're out of the woods. There are a lot of other things which could jump out and scare us along the way. So it's going to be, I think, a fairly nervous start to 2020.
But, Peter, as an investor, you can you still reliably take solace in the idea that if anything does go wrong massively, the big boys can step in with the massive liquidity injections for the central banks?
Well, I think what's interesting is that we've been hearing increasing noises over the course of recent months that there are limits to what central banks can do. Now, the Fed has a little bit more firepower, actually a lot more firepower than given that it's been involved in a tightening cycle over the course of the last couple of years. But here in Europe, of course, I think central banks are maxed out, and certainly we get the sense that the ECB, which has held interest rates in negative territory for an awful long time, are reluctant to engage in further monetary easing. And I think increasingly the focus of attention is switching back to governments to see whether they can provide any fiscal help to the economy. Okay, and that begs my next question. The beating heart of Germany, beating heart of Europe, Germany, industrial production, those numbers, I venture to say they were kind of decent. The factory orders, regionally, that was kind of so-so. How is Germany doing at this point? Well, it's a beating heart, as you say, but it's not beating particularly strongly. I mean, clearly the industrial sector has been hit by the concerns regarding the trade talks, but also, I guess, the actual slowdown that we've seen in Chinese data over the course of the last 6 to 12 months. The economy remains stuck in low gear. The productive sector remains very sluggish. There are hopes, I guess, that we're seeing the bottom of this cycle, but we're not quite there yet. The foreign orders component looked particularly weak, of course. So the manufacturing side, I think, of the German economy will remain, sluggish for some time to come. The good news, I guess, is that the services side of the economy, whilst not particularly strong, is at least robust. It hasn't been infected by the weakness in manufacturing, so that at least gives us some cause for optimism that the economy will continue to roll along, albeit fairly slowly in 2020.
Does EM pick up any of the slack if indeed we're going to see some sort of global slowdown as predicted by the World Bank?
It probably can, but I think the very fact that China is slowing anyway, and it's not just because of what's been happening with regard to the trade dispute. I mean, there are genuine reasons to suppose that the Chinese corporate sector is heavily indebted, which I think will act as a brake on further expansion. Demographics are increasingly beginning to run against the Chinese economy. So, rather than growing at a near 10% growth rate, something in the range of 5 to 6% is where we're headed, and of course that will in turn slow the whole EM locomotive.
Peter, thanks. As always, Peter Dixon, Global Equities Economist at Commerce Bank, joining us from London this morning. Head of the cash open on Wall Street, Dow futures up 95 points.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Shares of Bed Bath & Beyond are falling in pre-market trading after the retailer withdrew its financial guidance following another quarter of declining sales. It is the 11th consecutive drop in a key sales measure. The early market indicators point to a higher open on Wall Street, tracking global stocks higher after the U.S. and Iran stepped back from a deeper military conflict. And we had a higher close on Wall Street yesterday. The Dow up 161, the S&P up 16, and the NASDAQ up 61 points. Jobs take the spotlight today with the weekly snapshot of initial jobless claims. This after ADP reported a much better than expected gain of 202,000 private jobs in December. The Labor Department issues its number tomorrow. S&P futures up 10, NASDAQ futures up 37, Dow futures up 82. And NYMEX crude oil is higher by 0.2% at $59.73 a barrel. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Harry Bikers here. This message goes out to something very special.
Yes, we're talking to you, chicken.
Maybe we've been seeing too much of each other.
But times have changed, Dave.
We've been cheating on meat.
Thing is, no stocks make veggie dishes so irresistible that cheating on meat is proper tasty.
Our dear chicken, you were the fire in my life, but it's all about you now, aubergine katsu curry. Prepare to be wined and dined, my love.
Cheat on meat with no veggie stocks.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 70 million. This Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £70 million.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The Grand DFS sale featuring Wallace.
Hello.
And Gromit.
Well, say hello, lad.
Every sofa is made to order.
By a speedy Sofa-matic machine.
By hand.
Oh, suit yourself.
So you can have your sofa exactly how you want it.
Made of cheese?
Not that exactly.
Oh, probably a good thing, eh, Gromit? It'd be gone in a jiffy.
The Grand DFS sale is now on.
How about a cushion made of cheese? Or a footstool?
At TradePoint, we get just how busy you are. That's why with a handy range of services to make your life easier. Whether it's cutting timber, matching bricks, or mixing paint, we help you make big jobs smaller. So for all you need, when you need it, get to TradePoint. Restrictions may apply. See tradepoint.co.uk.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are rising as concerns over geopolitical risk appear to be easing. The S&P 500 is set to open near a record, and the U.S. and Iran avoid a protracted military conflict. Here with more is Bloomberg's Zaneb Fatah in Dubai.
President Trump was able to emerge without having to hit Iran. The Iranians hit empty plots of land, and also the Iraqi prime minister was informed by Iran that they were planning to launch the strike ahead of time, which would have allowed him enough time to tell the Americans.
That has the relief rally continuing this morning. Stocks in Japan rose 2.3%. European averages are higher, and S&P futures are up about 0.3%.
In another bullish note for investors, China is now confirming it will sign the first phase of a trade deal with the U.S. next week, and Vice Premier Liu He will travel to Washington for the ceremony.
On the economic front, we have remarks from several Federal Reserve officials. Richard Clarida, John Williams, James Bullard, and Charles Evans all speak at separate events today.
Shares of Bed Bath & Beyond are lower by 9% in early trading. That says the retailer withdrew its financial guidance following another quarter of declining sales. We get details from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Same-store sales, a key measure for retailers, fell 8.3% in the company's third quarter, the 11th consecutive decline. The company also withdrew its full-year outlook, saying only that profit and sales will remain under pressure in the current quarter. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. Shares of Boeing fell nearly 2% yesterday following a plane crash in Iran that killed 176 people. Now we're learning more about the event. Joining us live with details is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Karen, Iran's Civil Aviation Organization says the Boeing 737-800 tried to turn back soon after takeoff before plunging to earth in a ball of fire. Iran has invoked an international agreement to get assistance for the probe from other countries, including the U.S. Iranian authorities initially blamed technical issues and then an engine fire. Some aviation safety experts say the plane's sudden fall might have been from a bomb or missile. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Karen.
John, thank you. S&P futures are higher this morning, up about 11 points. Dow futures up 98, NASDAQ futures up 40. The DAX in Germany up 1.25%. 10-year Treasury up 2/32, yield 1.86%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.57%. The yen is at 109.45 against the dollar. The euro 1.1109. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says members will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iran. The War Powers resolution would require the president to cease military actions against Iran unless authorized by Congress or in response to an imminent threat. Meanwhile, lawmakers were briefed yesterday on the intelligence that led President Trump to kill top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, but some Republicans are not happy. GOP Senator Mike Lee was furious with the briefing, calling it insulting.
Every time we got close, they'd say, well, we can't discuss that here because it's really sensitive. We're in a skiff. We're in a secure underground bunker where all electronic devices have to be checked at the door, and they still refuse to tell us. I find that really upsetting.
Fellow GOP Senator Rand Paul was also angry, saying the Constitution clearly states Congress, not the executive branch, authorizes acts of war. However, another Republican Senator, Lindsey Graham, slammed Lee and Paul.
Go debate all you want to. I'm going to debate you. Trust me, I'm going to let people know that at this moment in time, to play this game with the War Powers Act, which I think is unconstitutional, is that whether you mean to or not, you're empowering the enemy.
If some New York area mass transit riders believe their subway cars were so 1960, they were right. The MTA pulled its fleet of almost 300 brand new subway cars from service Tuesday into Wednesday, responding to a safety issue involving their doors. The MTA swapped out their new cars with spare cars, including some from the 1960s. A rabbi whose home was the site of a stabbing attack in suburban New York is thanking state and local officials who reached out to the Orthodox Jewish community. Rabbi Chaim Rottenberg says his community wants to work toward greater unity following the assault during Hanukkah.
This horrifying event is a divine call for soul-searching rather than finger-pointing and accusations. Let us reflect in words on how we can eradicate evil from its source.
Governor Andrew Cuomo delivered a State of the State address yesterday, outlining his vision for progress on addressing intolerance and legalizing adult use of marijuana in New York. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It's just before 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, it was going to be hard enough for the Knicks last night. Utah going for a 7th straight win, and then add that the Knicks were without their top 2 scorers. Julius Randle for personal reasons. Marcus Morris has an injured neck. Sure enough, all Jazz 128-104. So the Knicks go 0-4 on the road trip. They host New Orleans tomorrow. The Nets, who've lost 7 in a row, will host Miami. Much improved Heat won last night in Indiana. They are 27-10, second in the East. The Nets just 16-20, in part because Kyrie Irving hasn't played, and nearly 2 months.
I'm doing a lot better. It's just been a lot of questions that I've had for what would be the best case scenario for me to go out there and play and what I can possibly play through with this shoulder injury. It's very unique because it's the first time I've ever had such a significant feeling in my shoulder where I'm going up to shoot jump shots and I can't really lift my shoulder.
Some have wondered whether Irving will play at all this season or just come back next year and play with Kevin Durant. Big East last night, nightmare first half for St. John's. Trailed Georgetown by 27, ended up losing 87-66, and now 0-3 in conference play. Seton Hall is 3-0. Pirates won at Xavier 83-71. Miles Powell scored 24. 2 days ago, Matt Rule was supposed to interview for the Giants coaching job. Instead, he scrapped it after getting hired by the Carolina Panthers.
I will work tirelessly each day to bring you guys a championship, to bring you a championship, because that's what this region deserves. And that's what the players who came before us deserve. And that's what the guys in that locker room, as I've had a chance to meet them, that's what they deserve. And as I said so many years ago, how do you do that? You just start building.
Panthers made an offer Rule couldn't refuse. 7 years, $62 million. Giants instead hired Joe Judge. He'll meet the media today with the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stanfield. Nathan?
All right, John, thanks. Later today, we get data on weekly jobless claims ahead of tomorrow's monthly employment report. Economists forecast jobless claims declined by another 2,000 last week. Here with more is Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
In the prior report, jobless claims dropped by 2,000 to 222,000, the third consecutive weekly decline. Bloomberg Economics says businesses will be hesitant to let workers go in a competitive labor market, assuming trade tensions ease and a global outlook stabilizes. Friday, the government issues its monthly labor market survey for December, and economists are forecasting the unemployment rate held steady at 3.5%, a half-century low. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. It's 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Boeing's about-face on pilot training for the 737 MAX is costly but correct. I'm Brooke Sutherland, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The plane maker is recommending pilots undergo flight simulator training before the embattled 737 MAX returns to service, reversing its previous stance that computer-based education would be sufficient. This represents a concession that the MAX was in fact different from earlier 737s and that pilots weren't properly informed of or prepared to deal with its features, despite Boeing's repeated efforts to argue otherwise. It's hard to give Boeing too much credit for finally caving to calls for simulator training more than a year after the first fatal MAX crash. It's a poor replacement for doing the right thing in the first place. But it's certainly going to be an expensive decision that will likely delay the MAX's return to service and give airlines fresh cause to press for more compensation from Boeing. I'm Brooke Sutherland. For more opinion, go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN GO on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN GO. 6:39 on Wall Street, time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
You have to go back a long way to find a time Earth has been hotter, almost 2 centuries ago. As far back as the mid-19th century, when the steam engine was developed to power the locomotives and factories that proliferated during the Industrial Revolution. The alarm is being sounded by Europe's Copernicus Climate Change Service, which operates a network of satellites for the European Union that collects weather, soil, air, and water data. It says global average temperatures since 2015 were some 1.2 degrees Celsius, 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit, higher than since 1850. Last year was the second warmest on record after 2016. As wildfires ravage Australia and pollution increasingly chokes millions living in cities, the new data highlights the rapid changes that Earth's ecosystem is undergoing as a result of man-made carbon emissions. One European expert calls the findings unquestionably alarming. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Thank you, Bob. And another story we're watching this morning, HP has again turned down an unsolicited takeover offer from Xerox. The PC maker says the deal significantly undervalues the company. Xerox had lined up $24 billion of financing for a potential acquisition. S&P futures higher by 10.5 points. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, Number 1 in firm leadership. Number 1 in operational support. Number 1 in compensation. Number 1 in professional development support. And number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Hear every play of the NFL playoffs live with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. The divisional round kicks off Saturday at 4:35 p.m. Eastern when the Vikings travel cross country to take on the 49ers in an NFC showdown in Santa Clara. The action continues at 8:15 as the Ravens host the Tennessee Titans in Baltimore. On Sunday, listen live beginning at 3:05 Eastern as the Texans and Chiefs square off in Kansas City, followed by the Seahawks and Packers at 6:40 in Green Bay. The excitement of the NFL playoffs is on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go!
Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Decision makers to a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
The House is set to vote today on a proposal limiting President Trump's ability to take military action against Iran. The Democratic War Powers Resolution was announced by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi after lawmakers from both parties criticized a briefing by administration officials on reasons for assassinating Iran's top general as vague. Iran is reacting to President Trump's speech yesterday that their missile barrage on two bases with U.S. troops in Iraq represents a stand down. Fred Pleitgen reports from Tehran.
The Iranians believe that there was a degree of rationality as they
they put it, in President Trump's speech, and the spokesman urging President Trump, as he put it, to come back to, as they say, international law and to the nuclear agreement that was signed by the past administration.
Iranian investigators say the crew of that Ukrainian jetliner that crashed outside Tehran the other day never made a radio call for help and were trying to turn back to the airport when the plane went down, killing all 176 on board. Stock futures showing gains ahead of the opening bell. I'm Michael Toscano.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street, and futures this morning are on the rise. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. We are seeing a rise in global equities right now, with Dow futures up 94 points, S&P's gained 10, and NASDAQ futures climbed by 38. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.87%. Gold is down 9. WTI crude futures are a little changed, and Japan rose 2.3% overnight. While European markets are also trading higher, led by 1.2% gains in Germany. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, a busy day for Fed speakers starting at 8 a.m. through 2 p.m. And after the bell last night, Bed Bath & Beyond pulled its full-year outlook, shows it down 8% in the pre-market. And regarding earnings this morning, look for Acuity Brands to report around 8:30. In deal news, HP again rejected the takeover offer from Xerox. And in other news, Iran said the Boeing 737 jet tried to turn back before crashing. Wrapping things up, Coca-Cola was raised to outperform at Credit Suisse. eBay cut to underperform at Jefferies. AMD was raised to buy at Mizuho. And Tesla was cut to sell over at CFRA and cut to neutral over at Robert Baird. Live from the First Word breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now with more on what's going on around the world, here's Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Karen. Democratic and some Republican lawmakers are angry after an intelligence briefing from the Trump administration concerning the U.S. strike that killed Iranian General Qassem Soleimani. They felt that the briefing was arrogant. GOP Senator Mike Lee says the administration was treating senators like little boys and girls, and he said that what got under his skin was that they were told don't debate this in public. Meanwhile, the House will vote today on a resolution to limit President Trump's options for military action against Iran. In the NBA, the Knicks lost along with the Celtics, Wizards, and Warriors. In the NHL, the Capitals lost. Finally, from Daybreak on the Bloomberg, Amazon's doorbell app Ring fired at least 4 employees for improperly seeking access to customer data over the last 4 years. In addition to investigating and firing the employees, Ring has taken steps to limit data access to a small pool of workers. It's the latest in a number of privacy headaches for the video doorbell maker, including, Nathan, allegations that employees passed around unencrypted footage captured by the product.
Wow, yeah, we got a long way to go to figure out just how to deal with the privacy issues surrounding all the information that consumers are giving to these big tech companies like Amazon. Very interesting development, Michael.
It's a great product, but like you just said, we got to work out some of the bugs. So. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 6:50 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories there include the House voting later today on a war powers resolution to limit President Trump's authority against Iran. Speaker Pelosi facing more pressure to turn over articles of impeachment to the Senate, and the president holding his first re-election rally since the Iran tensions tonight in Toledo, Ohio. Let's get more on all of this now. Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter joins us. From what I understand about this war powers resolution coming up in the House, Kate, the move is largely symbolic. I mean, what do Democrats hope to achieve with this vote later today?
Well, I think
as you say, it is largely symbolic. And so I think what Democrats are doing is laying down a marker as not just the opposition party, but also as the party that is standing up for the rights of Congress in their view. They are basically saying, look, we're a branch of government, and we're the branch of government that's constitutionally authorized to declare war. And so they're trying to say that the president has gone too far in essentially initiating military action without consulting Congress. And I think that sets it up as a way for Democrats to frame this even on the campaign trail in the presidential race, where they can cast Trump, the Democratic candidates can cast Trump as having gone too far and not gone through the appropriate channels before launching last week's strike.
It's been interesting to hear some of the reaction on Capitol Hill to the consultation that's happened after the fact with members of the Trump administration going behind closed doors with just about every member of the Senate. And we heard from mainly Democrats, they weren't satisfied with what they heard from the administration, and also, notably, some Republicans as well.
That's right. Senator Mike Lee, for example, was very, very critical, as we just heard, of the briefing that was given to the members of the Senate yesterday. And I think in some ways that's not surprising. Mike Lee is a bit of an outlier in the Republican Party. He's very libertarian-minded. We also heard some criticism from Rand Paul, who's another libertarian-minded. They would be perhaps the two most libertarian-minded Republicans in the Senate. And so they tend to be more from the isolationist wing, and also from the wing of the Republican Party that tends to want more checks and balances on military intervention, i.e. things like consulting Congress before launching any kind of military strike. So in that way, it's not surprising, but I think the strength of the blowback itself was rather remarkable.
Yeah, I wondered, though, how much more urgency there is to put pressure on the administration to be more forthcoming about its strategy in Iran, now that we're starting, at least in the short term, to see some of these tensions cool off with the U.S. and Iran.
Yeah, and I think the key there is in the short term. Certainly I think there was a lot of concern, over the weekend, the very beginning of the week, that perhaps this could, escalate into all-out war, perhaps even involving U.S. ground troops. I think the sense right now is that both sides have really moved back from the brink of that, and perhaps that, neither side really wants to go that route. However, I think that this certainly has, over in the broader sense, escalated tensions between Washington and Tehran, and so the possibility that this could flare up again in the future, I think, is a very, very real one. And I also think that's part of the reason why Democrats are teeing up the vote they're having today, is to, again, sort of lay down this marker for perhaps the next time this does flare up, particularly before the election, if that happens.
In the time we have left, I wonder whether a vote's going to be teed up soon on whether to send articles of impeachment from the House over to the Senate, now that we're hearing from Senate Democrats, some of them saying now is the time for Pelosi to send those articles their way.
Well, the pressure is certainly building on Nancy Pelosi. I think one of the most significant comments we heard yesterday was from Dianne Feinstein, who's a fellow California Democrat and someone who's close to Pelosi, also from the San Francisco area. So I think that certainly the pressure is building on Pelosi, but I think that she is going to play this out probably as long as possible, in the sense of trying to really underscore that Mitch McConnell, her narrative, which is that Mitch McConnell is being, unfair and uncooperative in terms of not setting out the rules for a trial prior to them sending over the articles. And so I think that she's going to play this out as long as possible, but she might be nearing the end of the line. Yeah,
I wonder, what advantage does Pelosi see for playing this out further now?
I think the advantage is waning, which is why I would anticipate that, most likely, perhaps even before the end of the week, we could see those articles sent over. But I think that she, obviously people were focused last week on the holidays. This is really the first week back. I think sort of continuing it into this week and letting her once again sort of reiterate her case that she feels like the Senate trial is being set up almost like a sham trial, I think gives her that advantage. But the advantage that she gets is really tapering off at this point.
Do we have a sense now of how a trial could play out in the Senate under the Clinton rule that Mitch McConnell has talked about so much?
Yeah, so the Clinton rule essentially focuses on having both sides present their arguments rather than, the introduction of witnesses and witness testimony and documents. And that's something that Democrats don't really agree with. They think it should be handled, more through the allowance of witnesses and documents and testimony, that sort of thing. And so that's really the type of thing that Pelosi's been pushing for. I think the fact that McConnell has characterized it as, the Clinton process, I think is his way of sort of underscoring that this is the way a Democratic president was treated. And so it would make sense to treat a Republican Republican President thusly. But I think that, Democrats have countered that was a different circumstance because that impeachment inquiry came from an independent counsel and grand jury testimony. So I think that those are sort of the battle lines, and we're likely to see McConnell not change his view on that.
All right, Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. Read more at Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg terminal, and follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:56 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report, and here's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And Karen, good morning. Investing in real estate, that's one thing if you know what you're doing. For those who don't, well, it can be a nightmare. And that's where Jeffrey Ratnow's small business enters the picture. He's owner and founder of Site Insight. That's where he puts his expertise in real estate development and civil engineering to work, helping clients on things like site selection and avoiding costly mistakes.
A potential client of mine spent about a year's worth of time identifying land and built a team, spent a lot of his own money to do a community development project, and when he presented to the city officials that he needed money from, he totally missed his mark, and the project was dead on arrival.
Well, Ratnow struck out on his own after doing site design for developers. He obtained a master's of real estate finance degree and transitioned to small business owner, all while his wife was pregnant with her second child. The timing, he jokes, was awesome. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Small Business Report. Karen.
All right, John, thank you. S&P futures are higher this morning, up about 11 points. Dow futures up 98, NASDAQ futures up 41. The DAX in Germany up 1.25%. 10-year Treasury up 2/32, yield 1.86%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.57%. And NYMEX crude oil is up 0.2%, now up 11 cents to $59.73 a barrel. Bloomberg surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Make a call given the data.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we're still seeing people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, good morning.
Good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, Middle East tensions fading, stocks inching back towards all-time highs. China confirming Liu He is heading to Washington next week to sign a Phase 1 trade deal. Attention turning to the American economy. Payrolls Friday just around the corner. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Thursday. Here is your Thursday morning price action. Equity futures positive 0.33% on the S&P 500, up 11 points after closing just short of all-time highs at a close in yesterday's session. A feel of the bond market for you, a snapshot as follows. Yields lower by a single basis point to 186 on 10s on 2s, or 1.578%, and are relatively unchanged on the day. And in foreign exchange in G10, showing you some dollar strength. Sterling is where your underperformance is, as the outgoing Bank of England Governor Mark Carney delivers a bit of a dovish speech. Cable down by 0.6%.
John, it's a quality of the move up today. I mean, the quality of the move up's extraordinary. We are on the bid and moving higher minute by minute.
Just short of all-time highs. Got that real melt-up feel to start the year. Then we bumped into the Middle East tensions, Lisa, but back on track again. Equity futures pushing higher.
What's interesting is we didn't really see a meltdown, right? I mean, amid all of the sort of potentially sensational headlines, the meltdown wasn't that significant, but the melt-up persists and sort of is the dominant headline. I think that is the narrative driving 2020.
This has surprised me. I got to be honest here. I mean, I knew we'd recover with good news and all that, but this is where I want to really emphasize to people driving worldwide, the vengeance of this melt-up is extraordinary.
At least the breadth is actually pretty good out there at the moment. 82%, I think, of S&P 500 firms above their average for the past 200 days. It's not just some massive companies dominating things, although they've done really well over the last 12 months. Some of the stocks out there outside of the big names are still up there.
If you've avoided stocks, you've been punished. So basically, traders have learned their lessons.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
I mean, come on. Are you going to make it quadruple leveraged a cash fund at this point?
Did you miss the announcement last week? You weren't with us.
I was not with us.
No, you weren't with us.
This is a big deal. What is this?
Tom said he was coming out of cash.
0.005% per day.
You know, that's
just going to
definitely
shift things out. As the year grows older, his cash allocation will slowly fall.
It's the triple leverage anti-beta fund.
Is that what you called it? Who manages that? Mrs. King.
That Bill is quite a good manager. I will say that does mark.
John, what's the observation you see today?
Look, I think things are okay. Things are all right. And for that reason, it's as you were through last year and into this year. 2020, though, is a show me the money year. Show me the better data. Show me the earnings. Show me everything's okay. You've had your easing. We had that from the Fed last year. We had it from the ECB. Now show me the improvement.
Well, and show me the improvement, but not too much improvement that actually calls the Fed's hand or calls the ECB's hand, right? I mean, we're still in that Goldilocks scenario. Because at a certain point, if we do start to see inflation pick up, that could be the sort of shock that a lot of people are waiting for.
So we bring in Jim Glassman.
We should. A day early.
JP Morgan senior economist joining us a day early. Why aren't you with us for payrolls day? What's this about?
I wanted to turn the alarm clock off.
Do you want to do a payroll special 24 hours early?
Yeah, actually my colleagues are telling us that when Thanksgiving hits late, you tend to get a soft December. So we got low expectations for December, even though ADP came in on the surprisingly good side. And I have to tell you, I'm amazed the job growth is as strong as it is, given the demographics that's going on. We keep thinking it's going to be slowing down. It is slowing down a little, but I think this will be the year when we see somewhat slower job growth.
Well, we got a headline just out, Lisa. I don't mean to interrupt, Lisa, but Kohl's really keeping on this retail difficulty. Kohl's out at the low end of their estimate, and that goes really into the retail spirit that we saw with Macy's closing 30 stores yesterday.
Yeah, and also the failure on the part of some retailers to actually adapt to the modern era. Interesting to see. Right now we're looking in pre-market down 9%, so definitely a pretty big response there, and we'll continue to give color on that as the day goes on. But I do have to wonder, when you talk about job growth, Jim, I was looking today, 2019 was the slowest pace of jobs added to the United States since 2011. Right. Yes, it was still good, but it was the slowest since 2011. How much can it continue to slow down while supporting what we've seen with the consumer driving the U.S. economy?
Well, we think it ought to be slowing down more, because if you look at the number of people who are 16 years of age to 70, it's slowed down to roughly 50,000 a month. 10 years ago, it was 200,000 a month. So that's the reference point where the economists are using to figure out where should we be going to. I don't think that's bad news for consumers, because what is happening is we are settling into a sustainable pace and unemployment stays low. Pay is going to be doing better. To me, the key to the consumer picture is, our workers going to get getting paid better. Who cares about, the first jobs don't generate a lot of pay. So if you have a fully employed economy and we're staying at full employment, not having to worry about recession, I think that's real good news for consumers.
And actually, one of the undertold stories of last year is that pay rises did increase significantly. And actually, I think it's at 3% now on average. But it's more for the lower end, though.
Yeah,
right?
which is basically almost double the actual inflation rate. So everything seems low right now. So 3% seems really modest compared with the historical. But the thing is, inflation's come down. Everything is running slower. But I think if you look at worker pay, finally, workers' real pay is actually more in line with productivity, which is what we expect over time. The shock to the consumer, to the worker, was really a couple decades ago when Amazon and everybody came on stream, and you got this massive jolt to the share of income that was going to workers.
Median estimate in our survey for tomorrow's payrolls print, 160. Before that, we had a monster 266. Lisa mentioning the decelerating payrolls growth over the last 12 months. We've been told that would happen for the last 4 years.
I know.
We're finally starting to see the characteristics of a labour market that has reached full employment, where you will get a sizable deceleration in payrolls growth, but it's not necessarily a sign that things are falling apart.
Exactly. And I think that's going to be a difficult story to get our hands around this year, because everybody's so used to what we saw in the last 10 years. And 200,000 jobs a month on average over the last 10 years. That's what you get in recoveries. The thing is, that's very low by historical standards. But if the natural growth of our economy is slower, it's adequate. And the thing is, it's been sufficient to get us back to very low levels of unemployment. So you just know if things stay okay, the pace of job growth is going to be slowing down more.
But Dr. Glassman, do we need to aggregate the economy? Do we need to aggregate the labor economy of America? To me, it's truly two Americas. There's a whole America taking part in this. But my number one mail is when suits and ties like you come in and say it's one America, and people are going, no, it's not.
It isn't, and you see it more in the pay trends. So to me, the thing this plays into the equity market story too, because the thing that's really surprising to me is when you look at where does the income go that's generated in the economy? The amount that goes to workers has been drifting down over the last 2 decades actually. The amount going to profits has been high. So that's telling you some people are doing really well, but that's telling you somebody must be really struggling. And you see it when you're traveling around.
Meanwhile, there is the idea of, can companies continue to pay these higher wages and deliver numbers that are acceptable to investors, John, to your point, and we are seeing margins come in. I do have to wonder, on the flip side, whether profitability is sort of commensurate with the increase in some of the wages that we're seeing.
People expected that should be, but from my point of view, the margins are still very high by historical standards. For example, after-tax profits of American companies for most of the post-war period was like 6% of GDP. It rose over the last couple of decades to almost 10% of GDP. So I don't worry much about profit margins. And I think
you're not worried about the corporate executives?
No, I don't worry much about them. I think they're doing fine. And I think pay, they can offer, they're going to have to be offering more. It's in their interest to offer more, better pay, better benefits.
And we welcome all of you. James Glassman with us one day early here with JP Morgan, always giving us leadership on Jobs Day, and we do it early this year, which is a great idea. How do you respond to the incentives of change for corporations to support labor and support wage? And I mean all of labor, not just staff for that, because corporate officers need their fair share, even if they get better tax treatment with it as well. With our new laws, have we skewed the incentives too much towards 5 or 6 CEOs at the top of a given company?
I think the cyclical dynamic is changing that story in the following way. When you look at you think about what's going on in the labor market, when we pick up in our surveys, for example, JP Morgan Chase just did a survey of business leaders. What we're finding is everybody's realizing they could do so much more if they had more workers. They can't find workers. That's what they tell us. So that tells me, I think what's going on when I talk to people, I see all kinds of creative stuff going on. They realize they've got to train people more. Once you got people in the door, you need to figure out how to do more with the few people that you have. And I think that what's going on is there's a recognition that the way you're going to grow is by developing your staff and by keeping them, retaining them. So I think this is a story that's changing as the cyclical dynamic. gives workers a little more bargaining power.
We'll change your plans for tomorrow. We'd love to see you tomorrow as well.
I don't know how I feel about this. Jim Glassman on a Thursday before payroll's Friday.
Just like out of way.
You don't need to know tomorrow's number. You already know.
We don't need to know tomorrow's number.
Breaking news. An early look. Cudlow says.
I'm actually more interested in jobless claims.
Can we just put on the record? Cudlow doesn't send it to.
Are you speaking to Mr. Cudlow this tomorrow?
I believe he's scheduled to speak to us.
If your badge still works.
An hour after the print. If I'm allowed to work tomorrow after what you just said.
I didn't want to start a rumor there. I mean, I just
decided to do it on live radio.
Just throwing it out there anyway. Jim, thank you.
Yeah,
see you. Jim Glassman,
thank you so much.
Good luck.
So we get some top stories from New York City.
Let's do that.
We bring in Michael Barr. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Tom. The Trump administration made its case for killing a powerful Iranian general before legislators on Capitol Hill, but Democrats and also some Republicans say the classified briefings were short on details and left them guessing about the president's next steps in the Mideast. Republican Senator Rand Paul took offense by comments made by South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, saying he and fellow GOP Senator Mike Lee are overreacting.
He hasn't even read the history of the Constitution. The Constitution specifically says that the war-making power resides in Congress. He believes in this unitary theory of the executive that presidents can do whatever they want. The only way you can stop them is by defunding a war. That's not what our founding fathers said. It's not what the Constitution says.
Iranian investigators say the crew of the Ukrainian jetliner that crashed outside Tehran the previous day never made a radio call for help. Iran's Civil Aviation Authority made the comments in a preliminary crash report released today. Wednesday's crash killed all 176 people on board, many of them from Iran and also Canada. The plane crashed just hours after Iran launched a barrage of missiles at U.S. forces. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Right now, our top priority remains the safety and security of all Canadians, may they be at home or abroad.
Iranian officials blamed mechanical trouble for the crash. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan are apparently making waves with the royal family. They released a sudden statement announcing that they will be stepping back from royal life. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 150 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa.
Michael Barr, did you give the New York Post the phrase Megxit? Were you the one that did that?
We're not doing this story.
I think we are. John, I think we are.
No,
Look, Tom has literally waited all day to do this.
I got 47 seconds on the clock that I just need to
reading back to
down.
Plantagenet. We have got to do this in 5 things you need to know.
We don't have to.
I took it back to King John.
Good for you.
Great.
I'm not
Michael
participating.
Barr, thank you.
I've never seen John's vein pop out that loud.
I am really not participating in this story.
The royal family?
I think it's ridiculous.
Why do you think it's ridiculous?
Look, Caesar left Rome a long time ago. People still go to Rome. That's all I'm going to say about that.
This was deep.
That was like a meltdown. Let's talk about the meltdown. Futures up 12. Dow futures up 112. The VIX 12.94. Worldwide, stay with us. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Aslinda Amin on Bloomberg Markets.
Bangkok Bank is looking to transform into a regional leader with a larger presence in Southeast Asian markets. It snapped up a controlling stake in Indonesia's Bank Permata for close to $3 billion. Let's discuss this and more with Bangkok Bank President Chatri Sapunpanit. Kun Chatri, always good to have you with us. Congratulations on the move. $2.7 billion to be exact. Does it mean a smaller dividend for your shareholders now?
We will still maintain our dividend payment at 6.5 baht per share as we have done for the last several years. Of course, this transaction is still goes through the approval process, which we believe will be concluded by in 2020. But this is a strategic investment for Bangkok Bank.
How did you convince your shareholders and your major stakeholders that this was a good move?
We are in the process of seeing our investors, and of course we have looked at this bank for quite some time, and we believe that the platform that Permata has has a good corporate SME and retail base, which will complement to the corporate banking and SME customer base that Bangkok Bank has in Indonesia as well as in the region.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines.
From dancing through the streets to the pulsing heartbeat in Brazil, to heading out on a safari in South Africa, or exploring the cultural delights of China. Wherever in the world you want to be, you can get there from your doorstep with KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. Book your dream deal at klm.com by January 21st and fly via Amsterdam from a choice of 16 UK airports. Make your dream a reality with KLM.
Perry Bikers here. This message goes out to something very special.
Yes, we're talking to you, chicken.
Maybe we've been seeing too much of each other.
But times have changed, Dave.
We've been cheating on meat.
Thing is, no stocks make veggie dishes so irresistible that cheating on meat is proper tasty.
Our dear chicken, you were the fire in my life. But it's all about you now, aubergine katsu curry. Prepare to be wined and dined, my love.
Cheat on meat with no veggie stocks.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area,